Yo, what's going on? Man, it looks like it.
Oh man, it's ridiculous. Like I'm sort of starting to get a feel for the way it reads prompts a little bit, and I'm getting some
Uh,
ridiculous results. But I'm currently messing with that.
once you have that,
Sorry?
once you have that, I'm telling you, like what you're doing, keys to the city, because it's setting you up. Like I know that as a video editor,
Yeah,
right? I can see the writing on the wall.
yeah,
Does that make sense? You can see the writing on the wall. It's not hard, right?
yeah.
You know things are going from flat to immersive,
Oh yeah,
right? You know, by uh, directional versus nonlinear in terms of like the experience of an experience, right?
yeah.
So, what's going on, Bubba? What are you saying?
Hey, what's good, family? How's everyone doing?
We good.
Chilling. Just Peter is. Have you met Peter before, Bubba?
My first time.
Oh
Nice
man,
to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Peter. And pass you a follow.
Cheers for that.
Peter. If you
Oh,
scroll down Peter's feed, you'll see some of the artwork he's done, and yeah, I've been talking to Peter in the DMs about like all the technologies he's using. You went from what? What's the Mid Journey to diffusion? Was that the path?
no, I mean they're all diffusion models, but I went from I pretty much started with like little like the Dali Mini type thing, which is
Yeah.
like a knockoff
Yep.
of Dali too. And then I moved over to Disco Diffusion. Then I started playing a little bit with Mid Journey, but sort of slept on it. Um, Now this Stable Diffusion thing's come along, and I'm sort of playing with that more. But I've always been more into like Disco because it just creates more abstract things, and it doesn't feel so. It doesn't feel like it's cheating. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's like it doesn't feel like I just type in a couple words and then I get something that looks amazing. It's like there's a lot of work
Yeah.
involved to actually get a
Isn't
good
that
result.
interesting? Isn't it interesting
Um,
that um, it that that friction is part of the process, and it's a good part.
Yeah, I feel that way because, like with Disco, you get a lot of settings, you get a lot of control over how it's guided. So it's kind of like, even if someone has your prompt, they're not going to get the same result, even if they have the same seed and the same prompt, because the way you set your settings up controls a lot of how the actual outcome is. Like, you can have, sorry, you can have it's set up to be really, really wildly like sliced up
Yep.
and just completely out there, like highly, highly detailed, or you can have like really coherent images if you just learn to sort of guide it in the right way. But there's not really much like there's a bit of documentation from like the community, but it's all sort of like word of mouth.
Yeah.
It's not really like this is how you make a really, really stable image. Like,
This is like the
just good luck.
eyes wide shut, but for digital art. It's like, how'd you do
Yeah,
that? You don't have a mask on. What mask? See, told you. You know.
yeah. So it's fun in that way. Like it's just a lot of just exploring and just like honestly, like this whole all this stuff makes me feel like a kid again. Like I said a while back, it's literally just kind of like that creative play of you know that sort of childlike mind where you just dive into something and you're just so enthralled by it and just excited by all the possibilities. And you don't get that much as an adult. I don't think a lot really brings that out in people. I think that's what excites me most about it.
you
Like
you
it's
don't
really
get that
hard to
much
get that
as
as
an
an adult.
adult.
It's
You
hard,
don't.
like I'm always excited about new stuff, but nothing quite gets me in that same way where I'm like, okay, it's been what, 2 months now, and I'm still just like, holy shit, this is fucking awesome.
it's, it's so funny to me. Oh man, adults have no fun. Are you an adult? Well, let me guess. You
Yeah,
probably
what
have
is
no
an
fun
adult?
at you. You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
Now, don't be triggered by it. Of course, you're not having fun in life. You have responsibilities. But
Yeah, who has
what if
fun
for
life?
what if for half an hour, just half an hour, look, just you could have some time to your own and create an entire other universe,
That's it,
right?
man.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's sort of the way the internet's headed in general. I mean, it's always kind of been like that in some sense. It's all just people out there like messing around and just having
Well,
like even shit like 4chan. I mean, yeah, it's all dumb and full of hate and bloody idiots. But like, it's them just sort of getting away from it for a minute and just sort of diving into this place where nothing really matters. You have no real responsibility and no real accountability even, and that kind of like gives them a
what,
space to just go nuts.
what's crazy is that it's almost like we're getting to this semantic web through digital art creators. You know?
Would it ever be any other way though? Like, if
Yeah, you're not wrong,
you think about it,
right?
it's not going to be the bloody accountants that make you, feel that way. Don't get me wrong. Like, nothing against accountants, but my brother did that. He was an accountant for years before he just like, he doesn't even do it anymore. He quit that. He hated it, but he did it because it was like a profession that he could make money off of, right? I have a mate that was a tax accountant for a while. He got fired for embezzlement, which is kind of funny, but like, I still let him do my taxes. um, but now he does his own business thing where he's doing like bubble soccer and archery tag, and he's just like, it's all about like having fun to him because yeah, he goes out there and he still has work to do, but then he sees like he's bringing joy to people and he's helping them escape from the day to day a bit, whether it's kids, whether it's adults. It's just it's all about that kind of like this is it. There's more to life than just sitting around and crunching numbers, for example.
Life, it's almost like before Excel and after Excel, right? Those are the two lives you have.
I feel like it's too easy to get too stuck in that. Like even I mean, I love my job, but it has its moments of where it starts to feel too production line, too demanding in the sense of how do I put it? Like it's constructive and it's creative, but it's not really refreshing in a way. It's just doing the same things over and over again. And when the industry puts the pressure on you to just like do that but faster and harder without taking care about it, without actually putting your own kind of like, okay, I
Yeah,
care that I do this right, or I care that this result is good, and they're just like, no, just get it done like quick.
yeah.
It's sort of like it pulls the
My
joy out of it.
my challenge has always been that I can't do the same thing for long. Once I figure it
Yeah,
out, it's like once I figure it out, it's like my brain quits, but my body's still there. And then like
yeah,
there'll be a few months where my brain is left and my body's still there. It's like, hey, why you not? Oh, that's right, the juice is gone. Like right. So
yeah,
I've learned to be like, okay, I'll do this part, but when it gets to this stage, I need somebody else to handle it because it it bores me to the point of me doing it badly.
yeah. I feel that. I feel that. My dad actually told me the same thing not too long ago. He said, he's always been the sort of person that loves to learn new things, but then once he's learned it and once he's done it, he just moves on because now he can do it. So it's like, well, he could sit there and master it and just dive right in. And he's got a thing which like because he's a clockmaker or watchmaker, whatever you want to call it. So he fixes clocks and watches, and he can do everything related to that. That's like his trade. But everything else, like he's always just like, if there's a problem that arises, he'll learn how to solve it. And then, he's not going to go and make that his lifeline career thing just because he can do it. But now he knows he can do it, so he's going to go do the next thing.
Yeah,
And
I think your dad had the greatest approach, whereas like you can learn anything like involved around solutions in a sector, but to focus on those individual solutions as career paths is not the best thing. But to put them all under the same umbrella, so like you have like a confluence of skills, that's usually the best thing.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. It's why I hate this idea of getting stuck in one thing. Like even on the creative front or the arts front or whatever, it's like I don't want to get stuck in a style and just have one little niche that I'll try to ride for the rest of my life. That's never going to work. That's going to die so fast that I'll become irrelevant sooner than I can say the word irrelevant. Like no, it's all about exploration and learning new things. In my opinion, that's what I love about it.
That's amazing, and for you to push the pace of your own creativity, that also means that you are inspiring other people to not be satisfied at the base level of life, you know? Like you have to continuously choose to create something new because it's so fun and it's so enjoyable. And there's not
Yeah,
many things in life that are that rewarding.
that's it. And like at the moment, I'm stuck on the AI art thing because that seems to be like a great way to explore all this. But it's like, I'm already thinking about pulling the Wacom tablet out again and like starting to draw again just for the sake of like even feeding it into the AI models and seeing how that reacts. Guiding them with images that I've created to begin with from like by hand. Like I still do draw and stuff like that from time to time, and I still make music and things like that. But it's just at the moment, this is what I'm like on. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's
That
amazing.
doesn't mean it's going to be what I'm stuck on. And I hate the idea that like just because I've sort of landed in this space that like I get labeled as like, oh, he's just like an AI dude that just generates images. It's like, no, that's not me. That's just what I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it's really amazing for us to be so like multi-talented and to have diverse skill sets because most people honestly find passion in one, right? Whereas
Yeah,
I think we find passion in all of them. Like we find little pockets of our soul with every skill that we acquire.
absolutely. I think every human has that within them. I just think we're sort of jaded and trained by society to reject it. I think, yeah, it's nice to be passionate about one thing. Don't get me wrong, but like within that one thing that you're passionate about, usually you do have that multi-skill kind of thing that makes it feel more than just you're not just a burger flipper, so to speak.
I think the core though of what you said, it's not fun being an adult, right? That alone is still sticking with me. Like it's not that fun being an adult. So now what? Introducing Disco Diffusion. That's right, Disco Diffusion. Do you want to get retweeted by Joe Rogan after 2 months playing with AI
Two
art?
weeks. Yeah,
2 weeks was it?
yeah, 2 weeks.
Mohit, Peter, would you call it a roof carpenter? I don't want to
Yeah,
say it.
here we call it roof carpentry. Yeah,
Okay.
because we don't have much timber framing like houses and that. We just have like we have brick housing and then timber roofs. So,
So, so
or
I guess
lumber, I guess you guys would call it. Yeah.
so. I guess the 15-second arc was that when Peter was young, Mohit, Peter used to love being an artist, and then he met life, and life introduced him to challenges and to roof carpentry. Now,
But
as a grown man, while roof carpentry is doing many things for his life, fun and enjoyment is not one of those things. And so to enjoy potentially a second childhood, he started creating AI art and started with very simple apps, and then started using one of the most popular apps among the new school, which is Disco Diffusion. And after figuring out Disco Diffusion, Joe Rogan noticed one of his pieces, retweeted it, got millions of views, and here we are today.
That's amazing. What a great story. That's amazing.
it's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's extremely inspiring. I hope that more people do. It's interesting. I hope that not only more people do it, I hope that more people have the balls to, or whatever, to um, explain it. Like the journey that you just took, unbeknownst to anybody. Nobody said, hey, you should try something. You just decided to try something that has such an interesting backstory behind it. It really could be motivating for anybody who doesn't want to fit into a certain space or feel confined, has felt confined in a certain space. So, congratulations.
Cheers. It's still very I don't like what's the word for it? It's that modesty part where I'm like I don't feel like I really accomplished anything because it's kind of like it's great. It's an awesome moment of my life where it's sort of okay that happened and then
No,
now I've got a little following, but like
don't get
I
me
mean it
wrong.
is an accomplishment. It is an
Don't,
accomplishment.
yeah, but don't get me wrong. You have not accomplished anything yet. There are hundreds of thousands of people doing this already in the world, but you have already taken the biggest step, which is you're actually verbalizing to people that you're doing it. many people who are artists don't tell anybody that they're artists. People, walk amongst us that are beautiful singers, and you'd never know that about. Look at
Dude, I
Mr.
know. I've met some wild people like that, and like I met a bloody opera singer out in public once while I was, funnily enough, my mate was busking, so I was taking over while he was like just talking to people, playing guitar, whatever. I was playing some Chili Peppers or something, and this like random person comes up and like I should like love you, love what you guys are doing, whatever, as they do. And he's like, oh, why don't you sing for us? Like, and she's like, no, I can't really sing. And she just full on goes into like opera mode. Like,
Yeah.
one of the most amazing singers I've heard in my lifetime is just this random person on the street that goes, no, I can't really sing that well.
Well, you think about some of the spaces you've gone into on Twitter or any of the other audio places, you'll hear somebody's backstory about being, a full on something else. And then all of a sudden they're like, and also I can do this. And they'll play like the harp.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. Even Mr. Mike over here with his
Steel
what's
pan.
that thing called? The steel pan, yeah. That was so wild. I did not expect that at all.
That's my secret weapon. Once you come in as a steel pan person, everything that you say that's half smart is like, wow, how do you know that? You know what I mean? It's almost like a dog who knows like more tricks. I thought you just played steel pan, right? So it's like coming from the lowest status possible as a musician, intellectually, right?
Yeah.
Right? They don't. What
Man,
could you
steel pan.
possibly know?
Wait a
Right? What
second.
could you
So my
possibly?
triangle skills count?
Yeah, exactly. Right? And
I mean, if you can play a triangle well, you're still
dude,
doing it better than most of the triangle players.
let me tell you something. You play that triangle, and then other musicians will come up to you, and you're like, "Oh, you're a musician too? Yeah, right. What do you do? Oh, I'm the chief information security officer. Blah blah blah. Right? And then you realize, wait a minute, these musicians are all crushing it in this room. They might not even like what they're doing and would rather be playing guitar, for all you know.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's fair. But playing the triangle correctly is a very difficult thing.
Don't doubt it.
Good morning,
Yeah,
everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are.
I am
Good morning, good morning.
in Australia. It is 8:46 here, PM. So it's quite late. Well, early for me, but late.
Good morning.
I have a
What's
question
going
about the AI art. So
Go ahead.
if you were to begin to collaborate, so here my theory is that the best, this is just a theory and I'm just sort of asking, my theory is that the best way for any type of computer generated art to gain various types of momentum is to do collaborations. And so I think that, I think that musicians, etc., will start to collaborate with you, and that other artists who have found other platforms as being a real connection point for their content might want to collaborate. It makes most sense because somebody like yourself doesn't necessarily need to build their own artistic audience from scratch in order to fulfill all the different things that you want to do with it. So, and that's
Only
what
you knew.
It's so Mohit, you actually told the story of Peter's last 30 days. Peter, do you mind sharing with Mohit what happened after the Joe Rogan thing blew up?
So I got hit up by the content/media director or manager or whatever you want to call it of a very, very, very large hip hop artist. Talking like, front stage, worldwide large. And he asked for,
not,
basically a collaboration project, right?
not me, just to be clear, right? We're not talking about me, the hip hop
Unfortunately
artist.
not. Unfortunately not.
Just to be clear.
Unfortunately not. But no, yeah. So that happened. I did that project, and that's currently in their hands. I've had positive feedback on that, and pretty much the response I got last was, "Make sure to put your seatbelt on." He says, "What was it? It was like, we're
Whoa,
going
that's
places this year
awesome.
and next year." So I'm not getting paid for it. Because I highly doubt I'm going to be getting paid for it anyway. But it's in their hands. It's part of their pipeline for their media campaign, I'm sure. And if not that, then maybe something else will come of it.
And did you enjoy that process because it was
It
new,
pushed
or
me.
did you? Sorry.
It really pushed me. It was highly stressful, but in the process, I did a lot of research on the artist in question and sort of gained a lot of respect for them. And it made it very easy to actually approach it and actually want to finish it. I think
So I
having that
wonder.
respect for someone really helps.
I wonder if you could do that for an artist that you have respect for that hasn't reached out to you yet. Where if you didn't have that same pressure, that you stopped and said, you know what, I've always been an XY fan. I'm going to try something here. Because then you could start to write your own ticket, technically, right? You could start to
Yeah,
say, these people have had an impact on my life. I've always loved this genre, whatever. It doesn't have to be your whole persona, as they say, but it could be a real good test to see where the line is between the business you want to do and the creative you want to do as well.
yeah, just sort of like tribute pieces in a way.
Yeah, not even just
Yeah,
like what you might consider a tribute, to other people. They'll
yeah.
consider it a better version in some cases, right? Or a real homage, right?
Yeah, well, that's it. That's kind of. I think I'd like to explore that a bit, but at the moment I'm kind of like because I've done that project. I'm doing another project for an artist that I have a bit of respect for. That's nowhere near as large, but in a style of music and everything that I enjoy and I like. I like his work, and I'm not even going to ask for money for that because I'm doing that as more like like an exposure project. I'm letting that run at the moment. But it's kind of like that detracts from me doing my own animations a bit because, like, if I do my own thing with animations, I really need just the space of mind to just focus on that.
There might also be an interesting, and this is me being completely pedantic and commercial. The background that I'm coming from is my dad was a Bollywood film producer, so
Yeah,
understanding sort of that world from a professional perspective. You may also want to go through artists who are extremely popular outside of the Western culture.
yeah,
And
it's also an idea.
so, one artist that I may want, you may want to sort of um, research. Sorry, I haven't had my ADHD medication this morning, so words are a little hard to come by. Um, one artist that I would recommend researching, and you can do that on YouTube, is a artist named Dimash, Dimash, Kodai Bergen. Just Google Dimash and see people's reactions to Dimash. And he's a young artist. Well, not so young anymore. He's in his late 20s, but he is something else, and it may be a very interesting thing to do a piece for him, and it would get you a level of exposure that you would not expect, because there is a global following of his. He's about as popular as Blackpink. Or like, I mean, just explore not only the Western musicians, but also some folks out of Asia. You might find different pockets of followers because you did this, and
That's
that
a
will turn into potentially a commercial success.
that's a good that's a good strategy. Actually, I respect that a lot. I appreciate you for telling me that.
Just to give you some type of measure, so there are all these reaction channels on YouTube,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I'm
So
familiar
if
with it.
so reaction channels that reacted to Dimash grew their audience by anywhere between 50x and 100x. I mean, so 500% to 1,000% increase in their followers and the
Just from
viewership,
the back.
just by reacting to him, because Dimash has a extremely loyal following. I'm one of them, by the way. I follow Dimash very much. Um, And
I'll put the
not only
video to
because
the
he's
top on that.
not only because he's a great artist and a completely crazy talent. Like I mean, if you haven't heard him, I will not spoil uh, the exposure because when you hear him, you're like, oh my god, that is phenomenal. And then you hear him again, and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe that he topped that. And you keep doing that like over and over and over again over a period of like 6 years of his performances when he broke out. Um, but so they're all. But the thing, what's very interesting about him is how involved and he is, and how kind he seems in his presence and in his collaborations with other people. Um, there is a very famous Russian composer named Igor Kotoy, who used to write pop songs back in
Yep.
the 70s and 80s and whatever. And he was retired. And when he heard Dimash sing for the first time, he came out of retirement to compose for him exclusively.
Yeah, damn.
Sorry?
Said, yeah, damn. That's pretty unreal. Like, you
Yeah.
don't hear about that
So
sort of thing happening too often.
yeah. So it's and their collaborative efforts have been phenomenal. So that might be a very interesting way
Yeah,
to find
I
pockets
like
of
that.
of
This is
audiences. And there are a bunch of
this,
artists like that.
Who's
Dimash
more
is one of
popular
the.
than Joe Rogan, but like BTS or a random Korean superstar that we don't know anything about, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Well, there are different types of artists, and they have different types of impact on social media populations, right? And you want to see what is happening here. One artist out of the Indian, and Mohit would I would suspect back me on this. One artist is oh, my brain just went again. Um, don't remember anymore. But that would be an interesting idea. Peter, what do you use for generation of your art? What type of AI do you use?
So I use Disco Diffusion, which it runs on the clip models that OpenAI put out there a while back. The clip being the language image pre-training, and it has its own sort of trained diffusion model, which I think was trained as a general diffusion model, and so it's all guided by like clip combined with this diffusion model. That's it.
Very interesting.
Disco's very untamable, so to speak. It's like you know, trying to herd sheep that are just frightened by lightning.
That's
You can sort
hilarious.
of
That's
you can get it to go in the direction you want, but you're never quite going to get the exact result. There's newer models like the sort of stuff that's happened with DALL-E 2 and Midjourney and Stable Diffusion now, where it's a lot easier to get the exact kind of result you want in terms of a very consistent and coherent image. And somewhat they might lack a bit of life because of it. If it's too easy to get the result, then you don't get quite as much of the.
the tension.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to explain, and like Stable is very fast, so I'm getting images out of it within like a minute, you know. Whereas Disco, like I have to sit there for 20 to 30 minutes waiting for a single image to fully generate.
And uh, is this tooling freely available, or is this something that you have to pay for?
It's all freely available, but I pay for the so because you can run this stuff through Google Colab, but Google Colab have, like they have their free model, then they have their monthly subscriptions to like have better access to hardware pretty much. Or sometimes I rent out specific servers on a separate platform just to run this stuff because then I have even better hardware at my disposal. But yeah, it's all freely available. Like a lot of this
Believable.
stuff you can even just
I
you can
asked
run this stuff.
I asked Pete, so I was like, "Hey Pete, I hate to do this to you, but I would love to learn how to do what you do. I know that this is your secret sauce. You know, this could be your future bread and butter. So I don't want to ask, but I would love to learn how to do what you do. So he and I have been chatting over DMs to see if we might want to set up a tutorial for a small group. We could just watch Peter do his thing.
That's very interesting. Peter, what about reverse? What about image to text? So, looking at an image, is there an AI? Are these models able to run in reverse right now?
Yeah, actually, one of the dudes that's making this, putting together one of the stable diffusion notebooks that I'm using at the moment, who happens to have the biggest and most awesome list of generative art tools, Pharmapsychotic, put together a little tool for reverse clip search, pretty much. So you can plug any image into it, like any art image or any generated image, and it will give you like a suggestion for prompt, which is a little bit scary. But
Well, it is scary, but it's also like so the
very useful too.
applications are very useful. The type of applications that I was thinking about are deeper text recognition, so much more interesting OCR. So, for example,
Yep.
if I gave it a photograph of a document, and I would have to kind of tweak the model, but if I gave it a photograph of a document that was handwritten and had pictures in it, it had a bunch of things in it, what are the chances that it can figure out whether that image has sensitive information inside it? That was the thought that I
I
was
think
going after.
I think
It
there's
has
new models
application.
like that.
Yeah, it has
Sorry.
applications in protection of against things like data leakage. It has applications in things like protection against child porn. Like there's so many interesting applications around it.
You actually bring up a
Absolutely.
very, very interesting point within that as well, considering how many documents exist on this earth where we don't know information is embedded in it. You know, think about how many religious pictures there are in this world, or there's one of this world, where if eventually we have that ability to look through the layer of that, through
Right.
that's
Yep.
such an interesting point. You know, for years we've looked at the same things, whether they're murals or statues, and who knows if this becomes the bridge for us to understand a little bit more about what might be the significance of an actual, 100-year-old painting or something else. That's so interesting.
Well, I know that there've been, like, for example, certain documents that have been translated using AI because the AI has studied those documents and learnt to sort of put it to English, I guess. Not
I
just,
mean,
like a general world translation, but I'm talking like ancient documents, things that we couldn't translate.
right. Like creating the Rosetta Stone out of nothing. Right. It's the idea is how do
Yeah.
you how do you make it how do you take advantage of but I mean the applications are so wide of this technology. It's such a
It's just,
I mean just in communications, for example, if I wanted to communicate with another person where we do not share a language, and I wanted to be more descriptive about what it is that I was trying to understand, or if what I was trying to convey
Love it.
uh, on both those sides. It's very interesting to see how this could be of assistance,
Can you
especially for people who are um, disabled.
recruiters? Like, can you imagine if I was able to take someone that I couldn't speak their language and actually interview them for a job? That'd be nuts. That'd be nuts.
Yeah, but I was thinking a little bit more esoteric. I mean, imagine if we could plug this into if we could give this to somebody like Stephen Hawking, right? You've got a person whose brain is stuck inside their body, which is um, which is betraying them, and they've got so much to say and so much to express, but it's limited by the hyper slow mode of communication that they have access to, simply because of the lack of technology, and poor interface design. Although, I mean, he managed to do all the things that he managed to do without with all of those disadvantages. But imagine if he had access to faster ways of communicating, and if we could put a couple of electrodes on the back, just stick them with a sticker on the back of his on his back, and he could, because that's a very large surface area and it's got access to so many neural impulses, that you could actually, and he could train it to just express what he is thinking, with a right, and you go from there. I mean, there's just the
So basically, I'm pretty sure that's what Neuralink, but Elon Musk's project Neuralink is seeking to achieve.
yeah,
Obviously,
there's Neuralink, there are other projects, but then the Neuralink is just an IO interface, right? You still need basically something that will plug into the other end of it. So this is like, okay, so we've given you a way to have a hand, and now we've given you a paintbrush that will work with that hand, if that makes any sense.
you're talking about customized training for those people that have access to those sort of technologies, I guess.
Well, yeah, but making it more available. So, for example, if we there was a TED talk that I saw. Sorry for rambling, and I didn't mean to derail the conversation.
No, this is great.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
But there was a TED talk that I saw about, and now I would suspect 8 years ago, where there's a group of neuroscientists who are also working on artificial intelligence. They built a jacket which had a lot of probes, which you could wear, and because the human back is completely devoid of any particular use other than sleeping at the moment. You could wear it, and it just the surface touch gave enough surface area to create that if you could train your brain to generate impulses that could drive a text editor. It could also drive a control for a UAV. Lots of different applications using the same interface, and
So
so it was basically a general IO port, which is
yeah,
fantastic.
so let me just possibly blow your mind for a minute, because all this tech is really, it's out there, it's open, like all of this is out there and open source. Just even being able to train these models, even stuff like we've had things you can wear on your skull to read your brain waves or whatever, just
Right.
wear like hats or whatever. All you have to do is give it a large enough data set with inputs and outputs from the end user, and it can learn pretty much anything. Like,
Oh
that's why
yeah,
we've
yeah.
got these AI art generators now. That's just one front of it. These things are ridiculously good at this point in time, and they're only getting better because with successive training and successive approaches, like, the idea that, like, every paper that comes along, you leaps and bounds ahead, and then these papers come around like every couple of weeks at this point. It's just application. It's literally at this point, you
That's
could make a
very
startup, for
true.
example, where
Yeah, that
if you wanted to, you could make a startup with, say, I don't know, like 20, 30 people, where you're just training a model based on their, like, if as
Like,
long as it's on, as long as it's reading the data, and as long as it's got some way to read what the output is, you
well,
could train it to read their mind,
right
like,
now, right now, the speed. The thing is, people don't realize that every time they do this, the models get faster at doing what it used to do slowly. And somebody brought up the fact that when they introduce APIs into this equation, it's really game over. So imagine right now, Peter, what you're doing is taking text input and then you're generating images based on a 1,000 knobs and sliding scales like Dr. Dre in a studio. Now, I'm thinking just as a video creator, if I was able to have a voiceover that lasted 60 minutes, let's call it a documentary voiceover. And you have the documentary voiceover that is speaking to through the API to Disco Diffusion, and it's painting the scenes in real time.
Well, I mean, that API is it's trivial to create, right?
Yes,
The
exactly.
API's level
So
layer is
trivial.
trivial to create.
So trivial.
But the main thing is, okay, how do you make the compute cheaper?
Yes.
Because
Yes,
the
exactly.
biggest so here's a source of information around that. So there are different types of hardware that's coming out in the market. By the way, software is about 30 years behind where the hardware is. Right now, software is riding the wave of hardware, and it has been doing so for 22 years, 20 or at least 30 years, in the sense that there's been advances in hardware, and we are still doing software the way we used to do software back in the 70s. It's rather crap, but leaving that aside, right now there are three different hardware projects that are going to change the way AI is done. And I'm talking about in traditional compute. I'm not even talking about quantum compute. So one is, by the way, before I continue, Peter, where are you from?
I am from Australia.
Oh, I thought so. So there are country people of yours that there's a lab in Australia that has developed a mechanism to grow human neurons, and they do that by changing skin cells into stem cells and then converting them into neurons that they can then grow on the surface of a special type of alloy that provides the interface between the neurons and the surface, and then you can connect that to the rest of the computer, to the rest of the to a general purpose regular computer, and they have managed to train those brain cells to play Pong, and there's like videos of how they're doing it, and the technology and the papers. It's very, very interesting. The important part, and so there's that. There's a couple of other startups. There's one that's made what's called a spike neural network, and spike neural networks is very close to the way our brains work. Our brains don't have a central processing system. It's just a collaboration of all these neurons, and and in both those cases, the neural net can disconnect and reconnect to other parts of itself. And the important part of it is the low power that it takes to run it. Like our brain takes on average around 20 watts at peak. So when we are really thinking and all the neurons are firing, the amount of wattage that we produce in our brain is about 20 watts. Compare that when you compare that to the and say, okay, let's apply that to doing a data center doing like a similar task. We're talking about several 100,000 watts, or getting into megawatt, tens of megawatts, hundreds of megawatts time, which is 100 megawatt is 100 million watts. So the energy consumption is a huge barrier to bringing that compute that you were talking about, Mikey, where you've got to compute all these things while someone's talking and producing images that are relevant to it in real time. So you need different types of hardware compute capability which can react that fast. Right now the model has to run through this crunch of as Peter said, 1 minute prompt, 30-minute prompt, like, from prompt to result. Right, you're not getting 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second out of this neural net. You could with the current approaches, but the amount of energy and compute power you
I,
would need
we would take
is
an intermediate.
ridiculous.
We would take like an intermediate step. So if you look at most documentaries, a lot of them will have like a still image, and they'll do a Ken Burns, right to left, left to right, zoom in, soft zoom out. So like I already see like the intermediate step, and so much of what I do is visualizing what people are vocalizing. And if I could remove the need for me to have to visualize it, then the speed of content would be like, imagine everything we're talking about right now, we're watching visualized on the Jumbotron. Like,
That's a very interesting. So then I would say let's take inspiration from Disney, and what I mean by that is, rather than have the if it's for human consumption, then what you could do is, rather than train the model to draw like paintings, like like Van Gogh, or Picasso, you just make it draw pencil art, right? Like stick figures, which are close enough to the depiction, but it can do that much faster because the output is so much simpler. But you're drawing, and it's like, okay, and that might be an approach to overcome the speed issue. And then I understand that you wanted to combine this. So where my brain went through this thought jump was, okay, what if we kept most of the image still, but we only animated some parts of it to still give, you can use regular techniques like Ken Burns and zooming out, or whatever, and then, but you're still providing some type of movement in the image, which is near real time as it's building.
all I'm going to say, Pete, is that if you were ever interested in building a product or an application around what you're doing, I think between Mohit, Ahmed, and myself, like I just got off the phone yesterday with Christian Potenza, and he's going to be walking a number of the Syndicate members through a voice acting masterclass, right? And so I see where this is going, and I see, even selfishly, for the group that we put together, they're going to be laying down their voice, and the voice is going to be recorded by a Neumann TLM 102, and it's going to sound amazing. And then what? Right? Then they're going to want to take that vocalization and visualize it, because somebody said nobody pays for music, they pay for videos of music. Hey, Ron, what's going on?
Well, I'm waking up as early as you just see I am on the West Coast, but the
That's
thing,
right. It's 6:17 where
yeah,
you
I
are.
woke up at 5.
Hey,
Go
guys.
ahead.
Ron, I want to introduce you to Ahmed, Mohit, Cho, Peter, and Canada. Canada, Peter, Cho, Mohit, Ahmed, Ron. Ron dropped from the heavens a few days ago, and he has a crazy knack for understanding the uh, process of scaling things and the ethos and the perspectives of scaling things. So I've been talking about him ravenously because of all the startups
Oh,
that we have
Ron,
around us. Oh,
so
man.
nice to meet you. I would I would love to talk to you about scaling Safe AI, one of my startups, and it's been so any advice on that would be so helpful, and we would thank you practically for it.
I'm thankful for the value exchange being described literally from the get-go. That's very much appreciated. Uh,
What a
I
concept.
I love the fact that you pegged me down right after that, Mike, as a growth expert. I'm a startup failure for 20 years of 8 of my own. I helped 20 to 200 to 300 others, and 1,000 founders. Those numbers are not for anything braggadocious outside of the fact that I'm really good at helping others, and I'm trying to convey the point that I'm really bad at helping myself. When it comes
Ron,
to
let's. So, how about this? You help me. I've got a startup. It's doing really well. It's going through a growth phase, and I help you with whatever it is that you need help with. I'm really good at helping others as well.
Perfect. Then we find, I think the magic of what we're having here, and I've had the last week, and I always call it magic, and it's such a trite idea to build a network, and with all the respect to all of them, and communities with all the respect to all of them, it ends up being a funnel, a deal source, a moat, and a bridge, and a wall for everybody else. But here we are at the magic moment, so let's embrace that. I am not a growth expert. I'm a startup expert, and Ahmed, I'll take you on that 1,000 times yeses. There's nothing that Mike will throw out of my way that I will say no to, especially when the other person says yes as emphatically as you just did.
Oh yes, no, I think that. I tend to be. This is probably the longest that I've spent in the last. How many sessions we've of the syndicate you've had now, Mikey?
90 days, maybe, give
Yeah.
or take.
So this is probably the longest one that I've stayed on. Right. I tend to come and go because I've got so many. As a matter of fact, I'm about to run away because I've got to start my workday. But I just wanted to acknowledge all of you, and it's phenomenal. Mohit, it's good to see you, my friend. Just you and I need to connect again. There are things that I want to learn from you, and also maybe share with you. Peter, Peter's still here. Okay, sorry, Peter, you flipped on my screen. It's such a pleasure to meet you, and you as well, Ron. And it's uh, Mikey. If you ever get off social media, you and I need to catch up. The
Yeah.
conversation has been phenomenal and very nourishing to the brain. I hope I did not ramble on for too long, but
Ahmed, how is it mutually exclusive to be on social media and not connect anyway, considering this is exactly what you're doing the second?
We're all doing it. We have a hand on each other's lap, let's say.
that was with pretty much everybody else. It would be fine, but that makes me uncomfortable when it comes to you,
I'm
Mikey.
totally teasing. I'm totally teasing. I had used to have a rule when it comes to the relationships and deals in general, especially on a vocational path. A, group is fine for introduction and make the first introduction humanity based. Two, define a clear ask on both sides, no matter what it is, no matter what the entity is. And three, make sure that ask is delivered on, because if that's not the case, somebody is literally using or wasting your time for the benefit of hierarchy, time wasted, or literally just because they can. So I'm 100% with you. And then the third one, for the third one, used to be when you get to step three, please share air with that person. Because when you see and share
Yes.
the room, it's critical that the person comes in with the whole self. And it's fun because I even used it during COVID. Of course, it didn't fly with some of the things I've done, but it's critical to share air once you get to a certain level of intimacy and you get that wedding ring on you when it comes, oh, we'll work together for our perceived forever.
Right. That is very not just the acknowledgement for with the externally, but also acknowledgement within. I think that's important. But even if you're not acknowledging within, do recognize it outside and bring it all back together so that the circle is complete. Um, it's that's really sage advice, Ron, and
And
it's
you're right, by the way, in not bringing the whole stuff to the table, especially when it used to the previous economy. And I'm not going to use jargon or word soups, but what was before and what is now requires a completely different bridging of the two. And I will say, to your point, in the quote unquote old world, late stage capitalism, supply side economy, debt based economy, infinite growth assumptions, all those things aside, made you put a different face that required to use just unit economics, just vertical, just churn, just margin, just financial projections, which is nice. But the reality, the failing, the late stage capitalism failure, and by the way, I don't give a fuck what fails or succeeds. I give 1,000 fucks on how to learn from both in order to make the next thing better. To what you just said, I will actually nudge you and say, yes, bring your whole self to that conversation, because in the world we're bringing about, which is inevitable, that change of fragmented, connected, asymmetrical, asynchronous, yet collaborative world with work that are passion and passions that are our life's work, that world requires an element that literally.
You cut out, Ron. I don't know what happened.
I think we might have had an issue there.
Oh, I
Disconnect.
think I sent him a message on LinkedIn connecting with him, and his internet just said, "That's too much communication. Stop it."
Well,
Is maybe stuff. But the
so
Twitter's back.
I'm gonna throw this out there. So I've been thinking about, curating the best of all of you for the past longest while, right? I've been thinking about curating the best of comedians so that I can pick out the best parts, right? Because that's essentially what people ask me to do, right? To pick out the best part of them, put that on the screen, blah blah blah. Um, you see how Ahmed, you went from the conversation with Ron to probably following him, one, to maybe a DM, to the LinkedIn ad. So that, to me, that the moment of the follow and the moment of the emotional interaction, right? See the heart there? Those are the most key parts, literally time stamped by emotions, right? And if all we did is create a curation app that focused on this emotional analysis, I know I would have the best of Ron and Ahmed, because it's
Wait,
both
wait,
of you
wait.
for free.
Emotional analysis. Who said what on emotional analysis? I
So
came in too late, apparently.
So emotional. So instead of emotions, it's emojis. So when Ahmed gave me the heart, he just time stamped a moment that I should definitely pay attention to.
Interesting. So you're going to do NLP stage three, but specifically for emojis in order to
Well,
find context, tonality,
I
intention.
I
Got it.
asked what three is it possible for us to find out the timing of follows and correlate that with the emojis expressed, just like this heart and the
If you
hunter?
record the space and it just gives you the tokens or the tokenology and item,
That's what.
tokenology because it's unstructured data. Also, this is timestamped. And yes, you have the recording of the
Mhm.
space. They
Yeah,
have that data because that's how they create rooms and matchmake people. And they will guard it because it's also a competitive
you
advantage
understand. You
and secret
understand.
sauce. Why
Yeah.
would they give you? It's got like hang time
Well,
or click
if
through
you look
rate.
if
You
you look
wouldn't
at
do
the
it with a
emotion,
rule.
like right now, what they're adding right now, and it may be overkill, but they're going from what, three
Because they want more
emotional.
data, not you. Why would they give it to
Yes.
you, Mike?
Well, here's the thing: they don't have to give it to me. If I was able to just get when you do a replay of the space, right, on your desktop, you can see that's Ali's thing. Um, That's okay. If you replay the space on your desktop, right, you are going to be able to see the emojis,
Which
right?
is fine. So you need a visual
Mhm.
analyzer to pick up a crawler, a visual analyzer and a crawler that will take all of that and put it because
And this is why,
speaker change location. So visual will have to literally follow. In other words, tracking, visual, facial icons for face. From there, you'll go
and
to
this
a
is why I
timestamp.
love talking to Ron. Does that make sense? If right, this is why I really love talking to Ron, because he can see the end game on a napkin faster than you can in a lot of ways, right? And when he pointed at unstructured data,
Before
that's
you
kind
give
of
too many
you know,
credit,
yeah,
before you give me too many credit, guys, I am the most terrible person on earth and asking for its own value. One, procedural or repetitive anything. Two, which I guess I got addicted to machine learning automation and AI before anything and lost literally my first startup for it. I'm not a machine learning person. I'm just good at it. And then three, another thing I'm really, really horrible at is anything that's not people related.
Yeah,
Period.
sounds like you just really need to go into consulting because you're good at telling everyone else what to do. You just have trouble doing it to yourself.
How about becoming a thought leader or a leader because I like that because
yeah,
then consultancy it feels so cheap. It's kind of like the Ron. It's kind of like the
dude.
paralegal,
You
but
want to think
you
of it as
can't be the
cheap?
firm owner. I want to be the
I
So,
firm
I
owner
had
so all I
and a
need to do
paralegal.
is just have a session with you so you can see your own value and what to charge, and then you'd be a great consultant because all you need to
Well,
do is
it's
figure
not
out what to
only that,
charge.
it's seeing through the bullshit too, because like the physicist told me, he's like, oh, I'm a consultant. I'm like, where's that? He's like, I look at people's watches and tell them what time it is.
Well,
I'm
that's
just
important
curious.
as a consultant.
So he's a busy consultant and a bad consultant in the sense that he's like a therapist, not end result driven, which is Zach, for your in
So I'm just curious. This is a slight derail, a slight on topic, because you were speaking about it, Mike. And I sort of see this vision of yours of this sort of like data collection with the emotional states and all that kind of thing. That's all well and good. What's the end goal? Like, I'm happy
I,
to be part of this. I am
so
more than happy to be part of this because this is
I
all
can
fascinating
try
to me as
mine.
well, and
Your
I
end goal
love
is
the
to make this
connections in the
better and
process.
faster. Yeah, Mike, I think
so
the answer is better and
If,
faster to get to the people and then find more.
okay, yeah. That's fine. Better and faster is fine. That's always fine. But there's
I'll
got to
tell
be
you
some
why.
motivation there,
I'll
right?
tell you why.
There's got to be some motivation.
The motivation is revenue. The motivation is
I,
revenue. And I'll
the,
tell you.
I
Yeah,
think
go
the
ahead.
motivation
That's
is
fine.
definitely
That's totally
revenue.
fine.
Well, I'm just going to say, like, the motivation right now is revenue, and I'll tell you why. I've been clipping Zach's, the best of Zach. You know how you have that little scissors at the bottom? I've been clipping it, right? Everything that Zach says that's smart, I clip it. And Zach told me that he gained 100 followers in the past week. And I know that people in the syndicate are availing themselves of Zach. And I've noticed that people now who have never talked to Zach are now engaging in Zach's winthewarcs.com services. So I'm at the point where I've seen people buy services because they've heard someone speak, not necessarily about their startup, but maybe just about their life. And so the reason that we take this to revenue is because of I'm closing the triangle on what Mohit described, which is that connection is more important than content. And so if we can connection, content, and currency, that's what I'm reaching after. I want to be able to sit with the startups I work with, talk to their founders here, take the best of the founders, and create content that leads people to go through a type form lead qualification.
No, I'm seeing
So
it now. So sorry, I'm sorry to cut in, but yeah, I'm seeing it now. So you're basically, it's sort of like, you know how you're. I hate using the word recruiter because I feel
Yeah.
like
Look,
that really
I hate
dumbs it
using it
down.
too. It feels dirty. I know. Keep
It
going.
does, yeah. It feels dirty, but I feel like you're basically taking that to a whole nother level, which hasn't really been approached. Or maybe it has in some ways, but like from your standpoint, maybe you
Yeah.
haven't. I don't know if you
I've
have
been,
approached it
yeah.
that way before in the past. I don't know much about your
No,
past, but I know that
I've
you're trying to up the game, right?
I've been doing
You're
it.
trying to make the best of it.
I've been doing it by hand, right?
Yeah,
So I've been doing it by hand, and I've seen it help make B2B sales with like electronic security industry, and I've helped to see comedians get thousands upon thousands of views and get into uh, comedy clubs in Manhattan. But I'm doing it by hand, right? I'm looking
yeah.
at thousands of hours of content, being like this one and that part and this part. And then I'm like by hand manicuring these things, adding the visuals. What you have is visuals as a service. You have visualization of vocals as a service, right? That, or at least that's where it's going to, right? And so if
Yeah.
I could say to the people that I talk to, hey, instead of thinking about this whole documentary, speak the script into that microphone and send me it when you have it done. Go ahead, Ron.
Peter, real quick, completely. It's not adjacent. It's definitely within the same funnel and absolutely within the same realm. So I'll take a dip of a slight nosedive into something else, but very much the same. I
Scary.
think most system optimize to become better at defriction in their own funnel, optimizes the revenue exchange within their own funnel, and in some cases learn better from the over the transom and learn better for the yield outcome at the end. And yes, I'm using deal pipe and deal sourcing and deal pipeline and roadmap for startups, but because that's just my world. Jargon aside, we are all trying to leverage our very, very finite singular individual time to something that is automated, broader, and further reaching by virtue of being both similar and repeatable enough for us to be able to reach larger and larger audiences. To your point specifically, how to merge those ideations and put them towards a very clear ask, value add, and a result. It sounds as if once we automate, or once specifically Mike automates this specific idea of how to reach to what we just did with Ahmed and yourself in this conversation within the span of less than 5 minutes, if this now can reach a stranger, and let's just take it a full stranger that obviously share our profile, but we don't know them, they don't know us. But that magic gets cut down in terms of time, churn, conversion, and otherwise by three quarters and above, which probably will be the case because between profiling, recommendation engines, uh, uh, any kind of fidelity that comes from neural pathways now on ML, structured, unstructured, qualitative, and quantitative, and behavioral economy and behavioral psychology, which bring new idea of putting KPI and metrics on things that are very emotional in their essence. We are literally at this zeitgeist moment of combining those things to why won't your pipeline be automated to find Ahmed, Ron, Peter, and Mike, and Zach in the same second, and Dan, I see you there too. So nice, and Mohammed, hi, Mohit, sorry. So yes, it's the same thing, but once you get it automated, you divorce yourself like any other startup. If you're a solo entrepreneur and you want to scale to a mil, 10, or 100 ARR, you need to automate yourself, hand over some of your caps. Yes, you can be the passion behind it, which is wonderful. You can even be the ideation, the structure, the template, the formula, the intent, and the Northern Star all. Visionary, cheerleader, and anything in between. But the reality is, if you try to do all those things for a long period of time, and that's for some people is 3 months, for some people is a year and a half, I've seen nothing past
Yeah,
these two
it
markets.
leads to nothing. You have to be able to rubber stamp. There's no question. Absolutely. And this is a very difficult emotional connection is very difficult um, to rubber stamp, but it is done. It's done in the field of arts, music, art, film, any industry where you know entertainment industry writ large is all about rubber stamping emotional connection. And
We can
there's
quantify
nothing
them, Ahmed.
disingenuous. It's not disingenuous. It's just you have to be able to do that at scale.
Yeah,
We
I'm not
literally got the
sure.
tools. We literally got the tools. So one things that happened really, really interestingly in the last 5 years specifically is I was a big fan of behavioral psychology to begin with because I looked at dynamics of pre-revenue startups, and the lie of 0 to 1 is a disastrous one because the reality of going through 5 pivots before you make money, or the reality of having the wrong founders, or dynamic of founders, or bad corporate culture. Corporate culture could be, by the way, 3 people and above because Zach, you'll probably appreciate it. If you have more than 3 soldiers in any team, you probably need a cohesion around a plan. Otherwise, everything will get fucked up. But back up in just a second, Peter, to what you were pointing out. The idea of converting qualitative to quantitative, unstructured to structured, finally found its voice. And after 20 years of failing as miserably as I have in trying that, I now see with behavioral psychology, specifically coming from underrepresented, overlooked founders, represent the entirety overlooked and underrepresented founders, represent about 14, 16% of the VC cap table, its entirety. Uh, that means the other 86% is very rich, very straight, very white, top 50 schools, top 50 firms. Never a problem, never an issue. Zach, back to you in a second. The other 14 are 76% of the population. And what I see as the most egregious problem is not actually having the VC cap table, the TAM, be as big as it could be right now, which then behavioral psychology and behavioral economics use numbers on. That's all.
That is so. My goodness, that was so on point. Just so on point. With all due respect to Zach, and sorry for interrupting, Zach. I know you want to
It
come and
was Zach
speak.
and Peter, yeah.
Yeah, Zach and Peter. I just wanted to say, give my love and say goodbye this morning. But it's been a true pleasure to connect with all of you this morning. Thank you so much for your kind time, and I look forward to continuing our conversations. But I gotta get back to coding here. Got a customer to deal with. Take care. Bye bye.
One of the
Yeah.
oh, sorry, Pete. One of the things I love about Mike's idea, and what I love about these Twitter spaces that are being held by VCs, by founders, right? And why I wanted to hold and I want to go back to holding my Thursday night founders with Allison, is because those rich white top 50 school founders won't be here asking for help because they don't need it. And so you can find the best diverse founders here on Twitter because they're willing to come onto these non-traditional sources to say, what can I do? How do I do it? Where do I go? Right? We can create a system, right, that mimics the Y Combinator of old, but decentralized, and gives everyone that stepping stone. Hey, spend 30 days working with Zach on the mindset of being a founder, right? Okay, now you've done that. Now here's Casey and Ron. Casey's going to work on you about your finances in the background and your personal finances and how to financially run a business. Ron's going to work with you on the ideation and iteration and what are the next steps, right? Oh, and then we have Oma, and we have all these people. We've got Web3. We've got you know oh God, we've got Matt, right? We can do UX UI. We can set these people up with mentorship on a linear direction instead of it being drop everything, move to YC and do this. We can say we're going to do this decentralized. Oh, and by the way, we're not going to take 20% of your company or 5% of your company or 10% of your company. What we're going to do is we're going to just do it on, small fees, right? And then at the end, only if you get funding through this, right, are we going to take even a small percentage. So it's not just because we did this are we going to take something. It's only at the end. And that's what I think is what Mike is trying to do. And Peter, oh, hey, AI art, right? You have a part in this too, because you coming in and saying like, hey, I can make, think about this though, right? Is at any moment, right? You, as you're growing what you've already got following, what you had Joe Rogan post, right? At some point, we could say, all right, now we're going to have you go talk about your brand to Peter, right? And then you take that vision of what their brand is, you kind of close your eyes and you go in and you find the prompts and you come up with a whole little series that you post, right? With maybe their logo, right? And now we're building not just a team that just teaches founders how to run a company, but we're actually in the foxhole with them. We're in there helping them build every step of the way and then going, now you're ready. Go out into the world, right? Like that's what I think Mike is trying to do. Maybe I just have this grand vision that
No, that's exactly it.
yeah.
I mean, at a terribly meat body accounting level, I believe that the maybe one of the 100 followers is maybe going to avail themselves. Like, do you have any insight into how many people actually paid you money over the past week or set consults, all that good stuff?
Just from here?
From the past week or the past 2 weeks since you engaged with Kappa copywriting,
So I have I got three from the one other founder who ended up getting that 7-figure funding for his pre-seed round. And now all of his friends have been signing up. So we got 3 from there. Then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pretty much through the syndicate in like 2 weeks.
That's amazing. That is actually, the snowball effect is real. The only reason I bring this up though, right, or in the first place, and Ron, I'm not trying to at all minimize what you said. I actually appreciate everything you've said.
Do everything to challenge, hurt, and
Yeah.
burn my ideas to the ground. It'll come up
No.
better. Please.
You're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Ron
Everything you've said has been
Ron
great.
likes whips and chains, so go ahead and pull them out.
Who doesn't?
But me, myself, okay.
I love you, buddy.
Who doesn't? Show them to me and I'll prove you otherwise.
You've got a point. But in all honesty, the only reason I bring it up even to begin with, for one, just gaining the understanding from my own perspective, like I already had this sort of assumption, and so I just wanted to kind of, build on that and make sure I got the right understanding, which is fine. Like, yep, I'm pretty much in line with what I was kind of assuming in a way, maybe in some ways wrong, but in other ways correct. And that's kind of like, so that's part of why I ask these questions. The other part is I have a more holistic kind of view on things. My relationship with reality is very strange. I will be the first to say that, and not the first to say that outright, but like, you know, like I'll be the first to
Founder.
admit it. I don't need someone else to tell me that, you know, you've got a strange relationship with reality. I have a strange relationship with reality. It's fucking bullshit. But the holistic approach is really at a fundamental level, why should I personally care? And I don't mean that in a mean way, just like, how are you going to drag someone like me and someone who doesn't have, okay, like you're going to be saying all these different things about, like, you know, the statistics of, you know, 20-30% or whatever. It's like, personally, and don't get me wrong, I don't really care about that. What I care about is that connection, the engagement, right? Like, if I engage with just one person, that's fine. That's great. Like, how are you going to help me with that? How are you going to? So I think the focus in some ways should be about expressing that at a personal level, that connection, right? Like, and some people will respond better to that. Like, some people will be very diehard, statistically driven. Me, I don't try to view it that way too much. I try to view it, like, again, it's that more holistic thing. But if you can target that, the like, okay, this is what this person cares about. This is what's going to really, what's the word for it? What's really going to drive it? You know, like, what's really going to drive it home to them and, you know, keep them engaged. That's where you want to, like, just, you know, keep your focus, I think, on an individual level.
Empowering.
Well, here's how I look at it. There is, in any interaction, there is who you are, who you're talking to, and where you are. My name is Michael Jagdeo. I'm speaking to all of you who are all over the place, and we're in a Twitter space. Your voices are bouncing off my walls, and my voice is bouncing off yours. There is also someone that we haven't mentioned, though. There is the co-host, the host, the speakers, and then there are the listeners and observers. We are never going to know who watched this because this is recorded. And I see that the replays of these spaces are starting to go up and up, right? And so what's happening is that this is very like Rene Girard Mimeticism. I apologize for bringing up Peter Thiel. I know we are post-Peter Thielists, I guess, like postmodernists. Still want
Or
the
just gay
Patagonia.
that hates gays, but it's okay.
We still like the Patagonia, though. That's really comfortable. It's about to be fall. What else are you going to wear? So I see where this is going, and I always had this idea that I want to focus on like individuals worth launching. And what we have is we have listeners who are observing this conversation, and the listener is observing a conversation with a speaker and someone else. Now, this someone else is very powerful when the listener can identify with one of the two people speaking. And when they identify personally with maybe the question being asked or the disorienting dilemma, then they really identify the person giving a great answer as someone they might want to follow, or at least DM, at least retweet what they have to say. And so that moment of the observer seeing, I only thought it was between the different speakers. I thought this was just a relationship between host, co-host, and speakers. I did not realize the impact that it would have on listeners and future observers because they identified with people in the conversation.
Ron, imagine if Sarah's founder chats on Tuesday, if she picked one under-networked, underrepresented founder every week to highlight and bring them up, and then put all those tweets in the nest, and then say, what is it that you're missing? What is it that you need to get to that next step? And then you have a room full of resources, right? That's what the syndicate can be, is where we have one or two of those types of founders who come in and say, yeah, you know, I really just need to get out there. You know, these are tweets that have been kind of engaged with. All right, we have a room with 150 people in it. everyone retweet this right now, right? It's up in the nest. Go ahead, retweet it, engage with it. Right now we can build a brand on Twitter. Oh, my Instagram, right? That's where I get most of my revenue. Okay. Everyone who has an Instagram in the room, come on, let's go. Like, you can build armies around these founders who have great ideas, right? Who have made it through steps, right? Okay, hey, this founder's done 30 days. Now you're going up on the stage, right? Ron's iterated the idea in his head with the other people in the room, Dan and everyone from the syndicate kind of went through the idea and went, is this going to get leapfrogged? Is this really going to be a millions and millions of dollars worth of, is this going to be a 9-figure business, a 10-figure business? Or, what are we dealing with? Right? We go through that. Now, all of a sudden, we're like, all right, bring them up on stage. Let's let them talk. Let's start throwing their tweets out. Right?
Keep in mind that the key is not necessarily the startup. The key, see, I don't think anyone cares about Echelon LLC, but they know who Jocko Willink is. I don't think necessarily, you could have called Win the War whatever you want, right? You could have called it, laminate flooring, right? But if laminate flooring coaching was your company, I would sign up for laminate coaching. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying though, is like once
How
there's
dare you
a
throw in
process to do it.
branding, years, and marketing, go-to-market strategy, beachhead, customer acquisition, profiling, and segmentation out the window so quickly?
Because that's all bullshit. I mean, like, if you're just trying to sell a book by its cover, then you're never going to sell many books, are you?
But you better have a damn good cover for those who don't know you.
But I think that that's the thing, right?
Yeah,
Is like,
sure.
I think that there's a lot of these founders who have great ideas. They're great founders, but in these areas.
Keep in mind, as a lowly recruiter, my only job is to make you look good. You know what I mean? And that's all I'm doing. I just make you look good.
You
And
keep doing the
apparently I
lowly
make you
thing.
look good and make you sound good. But instead of manicuring and setting up the lights and hiring a director of photography, I let you existing on Twitter Space and your authentic voice sell you. A lot of like the voice acting is around like, hey, I'm going to do 100 this thing, and we're going to pick the best one, and we're going to smooth it out, and we're going to make it perfect. But I think people would rather buy from someone that they saw interacting as themselves, because they know that everything is a farce, right? They're confronted with icing on a rotten cake all day long.
Then I'll answer
Well, I
Zach
think,
the Serica thing real quick, Peter, before then I'll give it to you.
sorry,
Zach, I think the idea of having quote unquote an ambassador in different spaces that represent a vetted community is both an investor, an angel investor, a venture partner, and anybody from the founder onward side, in other words, the capital side, will be rewarded handsomely for defrictioning part of the due diligence, the deal room, and sourcing. So yes to the Sarah idea, yes for an ambassador, one, several, or otherwise that will vouch for that person, and then just putting them on stage. I don't think there's any friction doing this ad hoc. I think that will be just rewarded and accepted. Also, because this group is more focused on actionable gains, which is something I've seen now in the 3 times that I've been here, and it's been collectively, consistently present in every conversation. That is very much unlike usually early stage startup spaces, which is more about, oh, where you are and how can we help? And it's still esoteric and very much amorphous and very much procedural and technical in some areas, because we have very pertinent, immediate answers for very pertinent, immediate questions, but it doesn't follow up with an action item. And when you bring somebody like anybody from this group that is vouched by the group, worked with the group, and there are tangible values that have been extracted, and those are for the VC world, or at least the venture world, family office, angel group, and otherwise, those are traction markers. So yes, yes, and yes, and we could do it ad hoc. I'll stop there. Peter, you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that, like, yeah, definitely. I think showing your real self in so much as you can. I mean, obviously, we all put on masks to some degree. I try not to, but I think most of us try not to, but we all still do. We all
I
still
try to
have that
break
role that we
them.
play.
Break them.
Yeah, yeah, but we all still have a role that we play when we're talking about things based on our, our experiences, our backgrounds, all this and that. So we're all still like, a kind of a character in our own sort of way. That's inevitable. That's you can't destroy that completely. But showing, as much of yourself as you can, yep, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is why I do what I do. I think that's ultimately more engaging than just like, right, this is what I can
Yep.
do for you.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I've
Yep.
got a million people out there that can like, do graphic design for me, but why should I care about any one of them? And
Mhm.
again, it brings me back to that, why should I care? And I don't, again, like, I don't mean that in a bad way, but like, if I engage with just one of those people in a way that like, you know what, I like this person, I like what they're about, I like where they come from in life, I like their story, I'm automatically going to pick them, even if they cost more, because
Well,
it's just,
that's something that
it's just,
happened interestingly recently, where Elizabeth, who runs Dispatch Justice, we cut a small commercial for her, and her team liked it. Whatever. I don't think they'd ever put out a commercial before for their startup. She came back in the room and said, "Hey, thanks so much. Um, I saw the application Agora, which is like Spaces or Clubhouse as a service as a bolt-on to your app, and my friend is interviewing there." And I just put out a tweet about it. And she hit me up and said, "You know what? We've been looking for a solution, kind of like that, and always keeping our ear to the ground. But I would like if your friend is working there, I would rather work with a member of the syndicate so I could give back." And I was like, "Oh, really? So you would preferentially treat someone you met here because they helped, because the group helped you?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh, well, that's interesting."
And I think
that's kind of my point.
it's interesting, like the way in which you could do it, right, is there's a lot of people that come into the space who don't have startups, right? They don't feel like they're connected. Cool. Well, what else can you do, right? Like everyone has talents. And the thing about startups is you can leverage everyone's talents in different ways, right? I don't think there's a single thing that someone does that you're going to go, that has no use to a startup, right? Like, especially if it's given as, hey, this is what I can do for you, just because I'm part of the syndicate too, right? Like, Peter, I need I need you to take the Win the War logo and just here's the brand profile and just come up with some cool little transition thing so that I can put it on the site. Cool. Like, I need content, right? Like, I need posts. You can do all of that with this group. I
Well,
mean,
I
Mike's
abuse
made, how many threads have you made for Win the War now?
me. I mean, yesterday we worked on the infographic, right? Where
Yeah,
we
and just having conversations in here, Kappa's gotten probably 20, 30 threads out of it.
it's I mean, from the time we met, I used your DMs. I'm like, hold on, what's this military decision making process? Hold on, what is RDSP? Hold on, what's TLP? Hey, what's this patrolling thing? Because I was like, wait a minute, there are a lot of blind spots in my business doctrine, and you seem to have it down to a science. And we just went back and forth, and countless PDFs, right, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So yeah, even for myself, the best tweets are in the DMs. You know what I mean?
I'll jump in real quick. Wait, so you create content. I'll put a tiny little pin in this, sorry for corporate speak, and go back to the Peter, what's in it for me. I wish everybody in any context, on any level, in any environment, will be able to say that exactly as clearly as you did, because God, do I fucking hate anything other than that. If you don't like, want, need, or are passionate about what I can bring to your table and vice versa, we are better off saying goodbye. And why we do it with anything that's not business, but we got indoctrinated into a world that says No, 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 no. The cushion of talking to investor for the 15th time when you're still literally raising a seat on a bridge is somehow okay. When those poor founders, I literally was one of them too many times because I'm also gay, throupled, and poly, and granted, I'm the least version of DI possible on earth. So at this point, I'm just an ally by virtue of skin tone, cisgender, male, fine. Expat Jew can go to the sideline once I look like I look, especially in the first 5 minutes of a Zoom call. That aside, just put that aside. Be
Till you get
fucking
out there and
clear.
tan.
Even if I get sorely tan, which my partners get way more tan than I do, but we do get pretty dark, but not dark enough to look anything that, oh, this white guy has nice vacations in winter time in summer locations. Anyway, back to you, Peter. This idea of efficiency when our resource, the most unrenewable resource, if not the ultimate unrenewable resource, is time, and relationships is a secondary one to that. The relationships are always linearly progressive. You can't go back to where you were in a relationship. There's no new person energy. There's no mistakes to take back. There's no recovering from mistakes to take back. So those two things aside, if you're clear about what you're saying that you want to get out of it, also framing it in the terms of gain, we will both gain the most.
This is
Yeah.
oh, sorry. Go ahead. You haven't spoken about it. You go ahead.
No, I do want you to finish your thought with Ron because that was go ahead. Please do finish that thought.
Well, and so that's what I was talking with Mike about the other day with these spaces and what he's the little like there's a couple of little software things that you can make with Twitter Spaces that would be really, really important in projecting and elevating some individuals. So like imagine if we do a let's say we do a 5 hour space and Mike hits the button and it pulls out all of the best excerpts from me. Now they're turned into tweets. And then you can take those tweets, right? And it should automatically, it can go into the AI generator to generate Instagram pictures, right? An AI generated here's AI's interpretation of this thing from Twitter Space. Now you have from three different little profound little sayings. Now you have three pieces of content for Instagram. Oh wait, now you have AI generated video. So for a 10-minute clip, you now have a YouTube video to go onto your YouTube channel. Oh wait, now you have Facebook posts. Oh wait, now it should generate the hashtags that you need to do,
Oh
right?
wait, we have a 5 hour visually moving documentary.
Yeah. So now, right, from one space, you have now generated within an hour, right, all the content for all the social media. I don't care, honestly, if this comes to fruition for my business. What I care about is that this comes to fruition for my grandkids because what I want is a collection of me speaking to drive who those children, my children's children, will be because my grandfather died when I was 2, but he is the most influential person in my life because of the stories my family consistently told about how great of a man he was and how much he helped everyone. And because of that, I am who I am. I am always trying to help people. And so I'm always looking for a way to codify who I am now and how he impacted me so that I can impact them. And I have a greater opportunity now with content, which is why I'm very, very cautious of what I'm associated with, even as jokes, right? Like when
Right,
people,
right.
right? Which is why I say to people when they make a jokingly thing, right, in a recorded space, like, oh, who's the skinhead? Because I am bald, because I am white and I'm tattooed and I'm in the military, right? I That's the one time where they're like, oh yeah, this incel. Why I go against Andrew Tate so much, right, is because I want my grandkids to have a curated way of looking at their grandfather or their great grandfather and say he was a great man. Because right now more than ever you have a responsibility for the perception your great grandkids will have of you based on how you interact with individuals now, right? There's no reason that this next generation should be terrible, awful people because they know the impacts of social media. So everything you choose to do, you should do with the full weight of knowing someone's going to find out about it, right? Like people who did blackface back in the 50s and 60s, right? People who went to anti-LGBTQ plus, inclusive rallies, right? You didn't know that people were going to see. You know now. So you have the responsibility to become a better person, right? You have the responsibility to go and project who you are in the right way so that your grandkids and your great grandkids know and can be influenced. Mohit, sorry.
Mohit, you
I
go
know.
ahead first, and then I'll go jump in afterwards. I'm curious, like, because there's an oxymoron there.
In one respect, I speak about the idea of what a digital footprint is quite a bit. So I do identify, Zach, in what you're saying. I think the responsibility this generation has to be able to document and share is very important. But I want to jump in about the correlation between this and the AI very quickly, Ron, before we get into a debate about this. We are 5 generations deep online right now. And we have a responsibility to start to document some of the stories of our history. We are immigrants in many places. We have traveled from, we have generations that we've taken for granted. We hear the ideas that people are documenting things on things like Ancestry, etc. But let's be honest, it's not foolproof. We're not really doing things beyond the entertainment side. So what it comes down to, the sharing of the stories, the empowerment, the feeling that Ron has now, and how in 20 years from now, it'll look like a barrier that he overcame to a generation. He'll be considered a trailblazer in his family for not accepting the norms and doing this stuff. You too, Zach. Like everybody has an impact that we believe in. So a lot of what we're talking about goes back to a responsibility that we're taking right now to establish whatever content, whatever it is that we're putting out there as that real connection point from us, from that genuine standpoint, so that we stop and say to ourselves, yes, there's history in what we've done. We're proud in what we're doing. We're continuing to document. We're making that difference. But at the same time, one thing we have to consider in all of this is we're still playing on the monopoly board. So when we talk about how we can sort of slice things up and send them to different networks and stuff, we're still feeding other people's networks. So the one hiccup in all of this is that we have to remain true as much as we can. But let's not also spend all of our time trying to be everywhere at once, because I think fighting to stay relevant on multiple platforms is going to end up being futile.
Zach, do you want to do? Would you allow me a pretty long-winded conflation of those three assertions, which
Can I
is A, your legacy, B, the ML component of history and identity, the more it played out, and then C, the role that the separate network will play in individual branding down the road?
can I
I have something to connect
can
it,
I
but go
just
ahead first.
can I just respond quickly just to the point of staying relevant on all these platforms? And it'll be short. Is that's I think coming up with a solution that allows you to quickly become maybe not relevant but present on all the platforms is important. And I think that's one of those things where you can quickly do it with. I don't need a picture of me, maybe just my voice on some of these platforms, right? Maybe just my words with some kind of background. Um, I don't need it to grow. If it grows, cool, right? Um, but I think that I want to be present on all the platforms because I don't know which one's going to last. And I don't know which one's going to last for generations for me to influence my family in the right way down lineages, right? Um, and so I don't want them to take after me as I am now. I want them to take the best pieces of me and understand that and take that into the future, right? Because I think society, maybe I'm being hopeful here, but I hope
Mm.
society will change enough where even though I think that I am a good man, I will be looked at as lacking, but I will be looked at as there are parts of me that they can carry on, right? There's parts of what I do that they feel should be brought into the future. And I hope that society progresses so much that I am even found lacking in areas of acceptance and inclusivity and diversity, that the future will say, well, he was as good as he could be, in the 2020s. But I can only do that if I remain present on a platform that will survive, right? And I think that the life cycle of business, right? All it takes is Meta to put way too much money into VR and for that to fail, for that company to become non-existent to some degree, regardless of how much they've raised, right? Like, it takes a generation of kids not using Facebook for Facebook to not be the place to put content, right? What do we do when all of our content is on Snapchat and it disappears, like, besides Snapchat server? Uh, so I think that that's my thing, is what is the lasting platform that I want to be on? So I think that that's just my only thing to that. But now I'm really excited to hear Ron, because he's like biting at the bit.
I'm literally sitting at the table. I'm like, okay, this was like a wonderful filet mignon from South Africa, sustainable gain safari. And now you literally just went me through the whole freaking jungle. Thank you, Mohit. Thank you, Zach. I'm going to start with Zach finding finally our Venn diagram and our differences. I disagree vehemently with you, but it'll come from a loving place. First and foremost, you are the best version of yourself, and your legacy will be hindered by hiding any element of yourself. Because if anything we've learned in the last 3 years, specifically from COVID, is this: our whole self comes to the table. And I understand your bias, and I understand perception, and I understand military. So I also deeply, deeply understand that the idea of perception, segmented, fragmented, and then curated, is to be digested, because that is the version that will net the best result. But in reality, it creates an optimal goal in which your great, great, great grandkids will not see you as a flawed or flawed capable person. And in failing to see that, they will fail to see the process that took you to become the great person that you are now, regardless of anything else. So I would argue you are great now, and there will be an egregious oversight on your part to curate who you are now, considering we just talked 10 minutes ago on the assertion that the more we bring our full self to the table, the raison d'etre of this space is literally elevating individual brand in order to build them together better. Out of the other two assertions, I'll wait for them and I'll let you speak first.
All I was going to say is, I'm not saying we curate, right? I don't want to avoid my faults, right? My faults in college when I fell under the spell of being, of toxic masculinity, right? I don't
You're
want
not the
to.
toxic masculinity, though. You are the person who overcame it. And I think that
Yeah,
story
yeah.
is important to start with the root of toxic masculinity, because why would I blame you for being a fish swimming in an ocean? But once you realize that that ocean is literally being built on the oppression of any other crustacean beneath you that actually wants to be a fish, that's a whole other story.
No,
I
yeah. And
I
that's
would
my thing,
be.
right?
I'm just gonna say I would be very interested in hearing a conversation with the grandfathers I never had a chance to meet.
Well, and here's what I'm saying, Ron, is that the reason why I think it needs to be manicured, maybe not curated, but manicured, right, appropriately, is because once I'm gone, I don't get to tell my story unless it's me, right?
Then parse it. Then
And
what you're
so
saying is parse it,
parse it, right? I
parse it.
don't want someone to come along and say, "Oh, he did this," and I want to get out and I want to say my story of where I overcame things, right? But what I don't want is when I'm gone, right? I need to have, for every one bad thing maybe that I overcame, right? You need to have 10 good things, because people will latch to that bad thing when you're gone, right? And
Are you
so
familiar
that's
with
the
chronological disassociation, which is this idea of digital content is disassociated from its timestamp and
yeah,
why things are dangerous no matter what time, whatever time? That's what you're leaning onto, right?
yes, that's what I'm
Uh,
saying.
why would I would again argue fully, if you tell your story fully in any parse way possible, in any medium possible, whatever comprehensive picture you can bring of yourself to the table, no matter who will consume a segment of your content, It's not divorced. It's not disassociative anymore. It
Well,
has a network of other contents.
well, this is how it's not divorced. So, for example, let's say they hear a clip of Zach talking about something. Then, right now, they can jump into the clip and then listen to the full conversation and get the context, right? So they may hear the climax or the denouement or the build-up, right? But then they can go into it and be like, all right, so what happened an hour before, or 5 minutes before, or 2 minutes after?
Exactly. So that's one, and 100% the reality of knowing that we're now curating it. Always have, by the way. Sensationalism started with newspaper, moved to 24/7 media, and now basically intoxicating us
Well,
through suicidal experiments for
But we
70,000
need to
people on Facebook.
well,
we
we can
also
Go ahead.
have the
need to
best
know
of and the worst of Zach. What about the worst of Zach? I would turn into the worst of Zach.
but
I
we
need that too because we can talk about dominatrix and
Yeah,
dressmakers and screaming at trees.
this is the
but we
circle.
and we also need to be understanding that the type of content is going to continue to get shorter, right? It's not going to I don't see it getting longer. And so
Disagree
you
again
have
because if somebody wants and likes something, they will go from short to
Yeah, they'll
medium
go
to
from
long.
short to long. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the
The
conversion
content
is
is
if
a
I
grower.
like it, I'll consume more of it. Absolutely.
yeah,
I will binge watch anything I like. If it started with a teaser trailer for the trailer, then a trailer for the trailer, then announcement for the actual trailer for the trailer, then the movie, then the saga, then the world, then the other movies in the world,
Progressive
then
disclosure. Yep.
it will not stop. If you are consumable because you echo and resonate with my ethos, morals, ideals, or otherwise, I will forever devour your content, all of it. And the thing that will make your content juicy is the contrast between your shadow and light. And by the way, I'm not a good and evil person. I do not believe in either. Everybody's trying to survive and everybody's trying to thrive, and circumstances dictate both. There's no intent. And when a person needs to survive, a mother will kill the motherfucking soldier that walks into her house threatening her kids. She has no qualms in doing so, and it's right to do so. Same when somebody is focused on their daily meal intake and they can't focus on anything else, why would you bother to literally look anywhere down on that person managing to survive in a world that we ask them to find a job, clear yourself up? I'm like, bitch, he cannot or they cannot see past the next 5 hours. Let's see how you handle that state. But I really do want to answer Mohit's other questions, so I'll pause here for just a second because yes, I'm on fire. Sorry.
no, I love it. Go ahead, answer the next one.
So Mohit, the second one, content, evergreen content is the bridge between whatever industry we had before, if you want to call it 2.0. In other words, internet inception generation 5, you called it, great. So we found it a maturity stage. It's not just in a connector. We went from Web 1 read, Web 2 read write, Web 3 hopefully, ideally, read write own. Of course, we'll get there because there's one thing, in my opinion, there's something delightfully delicious. Sorry for any lawyers in the room, killing the legalese as the idea of a convoluted thought loops and arguments that made anything read not only ununderstandable. And when I passed the GMAT, it didn't come even close to a single prior that I read in cases. But that's a legal tangent. So to your point about content, and Web 3.0 and industry, Web 3.0 and industry 2.0, we finally getting to the point of realizing that all of us want to find meaning, job, value, and someplace in society. And those are coming to, I'm not going to sound too woo-woo about it because it has very clear financial implications. Growth, infinite growth-based economy or ideation around infinite growth-based economy has already failed, always failed, because the reality is governments of corporations always found ways to become the most socialistic entities out there. But that doesn't mean anything. Again, I don't give a fuck about their intent. They're just being as optimized as they can within the system they are. There's no point fighting that. There is a whole lot of points creating something different. What is the bridge? Between the great resignation, individuals, and otherwise, evergreen content, and what Mike and this is doing, and I think in a beautiful form, is the more you have your content, and I talk about content as yours. So I use the word artifacts and content, and specifically your artifacts and your content, as think of it as, like Zach said, a legacy. So the more you own pieces of content, quick quips, informations, ideations, notions, ideal transfers, visions, northern stars, raison d'etre, magnum opus, go the whole 9 yards. You cleared Maslow, you go into a wonderful realm of what do I do with my meaning? What you do with your meaning is take all that content that is you and apply it to whatever platform you want. And by the way, Zach, a side note to what you said, I don't give a fuck which platform stays or goes. I think it's a little silly to even think that any of this is sustainable or permanent. What is permanent, and in 5 to 10 years, all of them will be gone and it will be something completely different. Much like our financial cycle, which boggles my mind that Google can literally unleash the idea we'll freeze our hiring for 30%. And if I will held even to 10% of that scrutiny as an early stage startup founder, I will be not just scrutinized and not being picked up by any lead LP or GM or VC from the top 100 by virtue of being horrible at unit economics. Because why can't you budget? You have a burn, you have overhead, you need to clear your runway. There is a clear milestone at the end of the runway, and you need to raise somewhere at the end of said runway to get to the next raise. If I put the same scrutiny, not same is not nice, but similar scrutiny to any other person in the United States that didn't see a downfall coming between 2 years ago to 3 years from now, they just don't understand economy. Sorry. My partners and I joked about the fact that, oh, wait, so the fall is around the corner. The moment we saw hiring jumps in the Bay Area, because it's kind of a signifier, it creates all the technology we're using right now to have this conversation. So let's just assume platforms go in and go out. But what will be really cool in this ideation and finality or finaler stages of what you're doing and we're doing together now is having that array, arsenal, utility belt, in our case, ammunition coffer, or supply drop for the future platform to still be us. That's it. And then the last point we'll hit, yeah, go ahead. Well, go ahead.
I was going to ask you if you thought that our digital archive will be the new version of the bank, where we'll put more emphasis on having a secure vault of places where we can put 40 years of content and more likely pay for that in the same way that this generation pays for a traditional bank services.
I'll let Zach answer real quick, but I think you're lying when you're saying that there was a question. You already knew the answer. So the idea of identity is already being monetized by virtue of being
No,
added.
actually, I don't know the
You
answer.
intuit the answer. Your tonality was intuit the answer because right now we have value. Every single one of the social platform we use uses us as some sort of a marker, indication, data point, anecdote, or trend enforcement or signal finding for the ability to extract revenue out of us. Of course, the inverse is stronger, especially when Web3 becomes more than, like I said yesterday, electricity for rich people, but rather electricity for all, and not cars for rich people, but cars for all. Over carriages, not smartphone for rich people, but smartphones for all. When Web3 gets there, we will have the agency and ownership of that too, which then, of course, change the power dynamic to a fair exchange rather than extracting the exchange.
I
I'll
like
stop
the
there.
idea
Zach,
of I like the idea of the memory bank.
I'm sitting here thinking, and what the where the conversation just went just made me go, kind of. I I don't know. I have ideas every time I hear conversations. I have an idea, right? Because I just that's how my brain works.
Zach, I finally can offer you something in return then. We'll make them into things. I can make them into things with you.
Okay, so I wonder how many people, because we have had roughly, 5 generations worth of, since 2007. So there's been about 13 years, or ish, right, of individuals who have had smartphones, right, with cameras. We'll say that. That means that there's 13 years of phones of people who potentially, right? So we'll cut it in half, call it 7 years worth of adults with smartphones with cameras who have passed away, and they have videos and they have pictures. And I wonder what is happening, right? I can remember a time where the family would sit around and we'd watch old home movies. I'm young, but my family used to do that, of watch old home movies of my grandfather, right? And we used to sit around and watch it, and like my grandmother and my dad and all of my aunts and uncles would tell stories, right, of oh my god, I remember when he did this, and um oh, I remember how he went and got this, and oh, I remember when he did this, and oh my goodness, this reminds me of the time he did this that wasn't on a home movie. well, we have these videos, and we are going to have generations of individuals who have videos on their phone who pass away. And then how are those videos shared with the rest of the family, right? How are they projected across, right? Is it just, oh yeah, grandpa had an Instagram, right? Or is it, here's all the videos grandpa took, right? Because what was what was so incredible for me was to see when my grandfather, who was diagnosed with cancer, would walk around, and you could tell what was important to him because he videotaped what was meaningful. And then he would go to the bathroom and point the video camera at the mirror, and he would talk to himself about, yeah, the doctor said I was going to be gone 6 months ago. I've been here a year now. This is probably my last Christmas. And he'd go back in the other room, he'd wipe his tears, and he'd go and he'd video the family, right? Are those moments going to be lost on phones, or are those moments going to be projected and shared on media? And if so,
I'm so
how do we make
happy I
sure?
don't have kids, Zach. I
Why?
am so
I
happy.
have kids.
Do you want them to go through my phone video camera reel? Are you serious?
I have a kid. I have a beautiful daughter, and honestly, that's one of those things. Is I wonder, maybe not them going through the phone, but right, like, Ron, that's what I'm saying though, is like, well, how do you get that all off, and how do you make sure that it's, those moments are
From recent
shared?
experience, people with technological savvy, people who passed away recently, they usually had some sort of, if it was an unplanned, instantaneous, unfortunately spontaneous death, most of the time that's kind of gone, and they go through whatever public pictures, and unfortunately, that's a really, really taxing. And some companies actually deal with that. There are literally quite a few companies in that space, in grievance specifically. That's what Facebook turned on the whole in memory of page in order to be able to open the door to family members to be able to reach certain content that wasn't there before.
Got it.
That being said, the more evolved version of that, again, I think like this whole idea of Web3 as a utility, which I really, really do. I hate Web3 right now because like any other new anything, people would literally fleece the fuck out of anybody that feels for a second they have a chance at doing something a little quicker. Also, the addiction of thinking that processes are not grueling, taxing, and actually long-lived rather than immediate and magic pill this, silver bullet that, summer diet this, body summer that. No, the reality is more procedural and a lot more taxing. So back to the reality of just you and I and grievance. It's difficult. There aren't many things that solve it, and the problem is exactly what Mohit and you were saying when it comes to the platforms themselves. This uncertainty when it comes to where you can present your content, specifically your content, be it my iPhone's photo reel, please don't, or anybody else's postmortem, anything. You used to have notebooks and boxes. Those are now documents on DocuSign or any other death driven company because all of them are like all of us will die at some point. So even the content that sits on the cloud, it's not a cloud that's either relevant at that time because it's gone, or you don't have access to it because they stopped paying. There are too many problems there. But if that person had their own library, so to speak, their own human library, and they owned it and they can put it or connect it to a will, that will solve that problem. But literally, this is a global sized ML caller silo that has the ability to not only fragment the data enough to not have a problem with it, but also to be able to put it in a will in a way that's transferable to your or whoever it is you want that content to be with. And that is complicated jurisdictionally speaking, municipality speaking, and it kind of speaks to this Web 2, Web 3, I think, argument. Web 2 C Corp shareholder value, and then Web 3 decentralized control, ownership by the many, which is literally contrasted. So it's a really interesting conversation for another time because it's a meaty problem.
And I'll give you an example of why we need memory bank right now. So if you look at the top, I woke up this morning and Facebook said that I posted something that they don't like, and all it was that it was with no text, nothing. Just the Pablo Escobar, what was that show, Narcos, where he's just like looking off in the distance, right? So it was just that meme, no words, no, just the base meme. and it was posted in 2020. And I saw it in my memories, and I reshared it. Facebook says we have this post goes against our standards, right? And we're going to restrict your account. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I was like, disagree, right? I disagree with the decision, right? And then it said, oh, we're sorry we got this wrong. We reviewed your post again, and it does follow our community standards. So it went in my direction this time, but in the future, I will get kicked off of Facebook. Like that's what I just see. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because if this
God
is all
God
we have,
forbid
yeah,
MAGA takes hold long term, right? What happens to your content that
yeah,
they think is wrong, right?
dude.
How do
Either
we
way,
ensure that diversity
yeah,
continues to
yeah,
expand
Or
and
yeah.
Zach,
diversity
even
of
cancel
thought?
culture from my side. You can go to liberal that you become literally just as monolithic and anti or othering or alienated from other perspective, from the side that wants the most egalitarian, the most productive, taking care of social network, safety network society. You can go too far, and that becomes just as monolithic and just as um,
I mean, we're
animosity
always
Hey,
driven.
going to be
hey, as the
building
cis
powers of
white
that.
male in the room, I'll worry about MAGA. Ron, you worry about being too
I worry
liberal.
about anybody or any person or any entity that manages to say the word they or them, because that excludes you from the problem, and we are all us. So first and foremost, what we see, do, and act and say, like you said, it's us. And if I am incapable of saying I did wrong, my bias was wrong. I had a recent conversation with not a trans, it was specifically non-binary person, and I have made a mistake because I compared my very, very, very fluid younger sister to her in a context of, oh, I get you. And she just went to school at me for 5 minutes. They're one of the most uncomfortable minutes of my life, which made them mostly appreciated. Do not make a BDSM joke. That's not it. But I was extraordinarily uncomfortable. But in the end of the 5 minutes, because she is an advocate and she signed the first bill in the White House like 2 days before. And at the end of the talk, I'm like, thank you very much for enlightening me because right now I see it differently. I am addicted to that moment in my thought process that says, in that moment, my wrong became a much larger worldview that now includes her perspective, experience, needs, and wants, and it didn't have it before. Why would I not ever want to be in the place that my world got bigger? Because when we're stuck with hierarchy and our world sucks, it's easier to say them, they did this, they're to blame, them was the problem, done. We don't look at what we've done to create the problem or how comfortable we are at the problem existing outside.
So you agree that a memory bank would be a good idea?
The more we have of us out there, I honestly believe we're more fortified for the amount of disruption we're about to see in its entirety. And what I mean by that is, as industries go through shift, and it's always amusing to me because history is so easily studied, yet so easily ignored, and so consistently both. Uh, like the cycles I just talked about. Like, why are you talking about the stock market as something that will give you money in a net yield of 10 years when you know full well when it peaks anywhere between year 5 to 7? Please take most of it out, put it in somewhere else, put it in another asset class, diversify it. Like, we know this. And if you don't have that much money, but make sure you have money under the cushion. And if you know inflation is coming, and so forth and so on. But to history and us in society, when we go through upheavals like trains, like smartphones, like cars, and we're going through one now. And we're going through that at the same time we realize mental well-being, mental wellness, psychological safety, company descent, hustle porn, burnout, pedestal elevating. Those entire components became one stew that is downright poisonous, and we finally saw it because of the acceleration of COVID. So to fortify it to the world that is coming anyway, because it already is here. Gig economy, people doing things they like more in order to be able to be themselves with more freedom to do so and still get monetized. To your memory bank idea and the library of self idea, that is literally an insurance policy that we can now create or start create that will allow us to be both fragmented, Swiss Army knife of ourselves, and then apply ourselves in the way we want, into avenues we want, and they could be a potter on one side, a gardener on the other, and a fucking butcher on the third. It doesn't matter, but what matters, you finally get to be all three.
Ashley jumped up and Ganesh jumped up. I'd love to hear what they want to say, but Mohit, you want to go first?
No, I'd like to hear from him as well. That's cool.
Hey,
Sorry
Ash,
if I
what's going on?
sorry if I put any of you on the spot.
Yeah. Hey, Ash, it's been a while. What's going on?
What's up,
Welcome.
bro? I'm up here making the coffee. Getting
Yes.
started this morning,
The
you know?
assigned. How you feeling this morning after our chat yesterday? We finally doxed each other to each other, right?
Right. Feeling good, man. Feeling good to get to meet everybody or a few people in the syndicate and get an idea of, you know, what everybody's like outside of, you know, or outside of the box. You know what I mean? Inside, in person, kind of. But yeah, I feel really good. I looked up some stuff on chakras, and
Oh, you got chakra pills?
yeah, right. I'm doing some deep dives into it,
Chakra Khan. I love it.
or should we call shallow splashes, not even deep dives. But yeah, just having a good morning, enjoying the coffee, listening to where you guys are at this morning, trying to figure it out, and once again, happy to be on board because every day it's like Christmas with you guys. You learn something new about the technological space and the emotional space that the world is moving in, and I need that shit in my life, like water.
I'm sorry. I've got to bounce. I should have said that before you started your wonderful, eloquent monologue, which I'm captain of timing. But also, I wanted to say that what you guys don't realize is you inspired something for me. I have a project, a dad project right now, and Zach and Mike and Ron and everybody, you've inspired something that I want to take it towards. So I'll come back with an update about that some other time. But meanwhile, peace, love, hair grease, and I'll see you all soon. And Ron, everybody, I'll DM you and connect with you for sure.
Thank you so much.
Hey guys. This has been interesting. A lot of food for thought. Um yeah, I didn't come up with anything in particular to say, although something that I heard moved me, so I quite literally pressed the mic. I didn't think, oh, well, I've got to interject here. That's not typically how my brain works, but maybe it was just a move in solidarity. I've been tweeting my thoughts, and I wrote a tweet about, why we wrestle with, being our true selves and posting about it maybe 2 days ago. And I didn't share it because I was like, well, maybe this is a question for me. But I wanted there to be some additional context in what it was that I was referencing. My tech journey is unlike many others, and I'm very much a thinking, feeling, artsy fartsy, soft life kind of girl. Uh, and my space last night about grief, dealing with losing a child, and how that's changed my life and encouraged me to encourage other people, specifically in the tech space, um, to realize, the present is what we have and what we can work with. I know there are so many people that are invested in the future, and that's fine. But if you can't take care of yourself right now, you ain't gonna be good to nobody. So, um, where I am in terms of like working with ClickUp is taking on this mental health conversation, this self care conversation, and making it translate for people who make light of it or think of it as a weakness when really it is the fundamental piece that they're probably overlooking or are beating themselves up about because of generations of thinking that that was what they needed to get rid of in order to succeed. I'm pretty burnt out from the conversation last night, but I'm with y'all.
I just didn't automatically speak in because I almost assumed Zach and Mike knows that I would, so I paused for a second. I was practicing listening.
Oh
I was I
that.
would
You know
just
what? I'm sorry. I just have to interject and say that is something that I've been practicing as well. It's been my role to listen first and let other people speak and then speak last with, talk about things that I'm noticing. So I've been going into rooms and interjecting or being the first to take the mic because that has not been in my nature. So I love that.
And my nature is the opposite, which is the moment I know, see, and can articulate something, which is literally immediately and on the fly, I am almost beholden, if not addicted, if not behaviorally flawed, to the point that I can't. So much like Zach and Mike actually said something awesome in yesterday's conversation, it's a lot, a conversation went in a different form. It's a lot about slowing down. And one of the things I knew that when it comes to standard VCs, and that's a tangent, it's a fun one, the top 100 VCs, when they work with anyone, think of them as when you are a founder, your intention in general and your direction in general is to be volume 12. If you're not volume 12 towards your vision, it'll be really hard to see your it factor, regardless if you're an individual that's an introvert or you're an amazing, inspiring leader. Those are not the separate or dichotomous or oxymoronic. It just, if you're a founder and you cannot be at 12 when it comes to the vision that's for you a clear present and for everybody else need to be parsed out as a future you build for them, that specific translation starts with you describing the story at volume 12. That's founder. The problem is when you're a founder and you're a VC or anywhere in between, a VC's role or a capital deploying role is a barrier or a hurdle in order to validate your capacity to learn, educate yourself, restructure, face chaos, externally, circumstances, and otherwise, and build a better self by virtue of responding better to these circumstances. So think of it like a capital deployment role on a bank is very simple because it'll be just a loan, document, a collateral, and you're done. On a VC level, it's a lot more qualitative and emotive and personal. Yes, there are bridges now, behavioral psychology and economics that can put number and literally dollar signs next to them, which I love because it's great because it makes people like us, which literally never get money for the sake of an idea, but rather get headwind from the and then get valuations that are about 3x less than they should be. Tangents aside, that idea of being 12 volume as a founder kind of goes down to about 6, if not a 4, if not a 3, when you're a VC. So this game becomes almost oppositional. Why? Because it's a vetting mechanism. Zach, you will probably relate to that more. The more force you apply on a person, the more stress you apply on a person, the more that person can create either muscle memory through learning the harshest, most baddest environment, and then the metal or capacity to deal with that environment becomes second nature, or you break. If you're the latter and the VC sees that even a mile away, then you're not worth it. If you can't edit or learn, if you're a founder that's incapable of educating or learning yourself, or you don't want to learn the market, your volume 12 is great for a vision, but it will forever be a vision. It will never become a product we use. And the end result for the VC is to have a product that yields them 2x, 3x. I'm being not humble here. They usually act for 20x, and they miss about 19 of the 20 swings they have. So yes, there's a whole new idea when it comes to bringing your whole self, but it's limited to the founder side for now. I think the future is bright for everyone for that reason, because I think everybody will have the ability to tune into their own volume, regardless of where they are, both as founder, capital deployer, and anything in between.
So You guys are, if I missed a little bit, you guys are talking about maybe possibly starting a memory bank or data bank that holds the content that, or some kind of a new cloud, or where's that? I missed.
Yeah, it's Mohit started off a line of thinking whereby content is being created. Fine. Content is being shared on platforms. Perfect. 5 to 10 years from now, someone with greater morals than you decides to delete all of your stuff. What do we do with that problem that we know is going to happen? And Ron articulated the idea that the memory bank that you had self-sovereign ID ownership over would be something that would be an insurance policy of your eventual canceling in the future.
On top of your CV, on top of a proof of doing, because smart contracts are immutable. And if you have another person on a smart contract that you did work for, that's an automatically transparent, like literally radically transparent proof of work. That and Zach, that will dovetail in about 10 years to veterans and certification about the work they actually done, because that's theirs. And there's a whole lot of wonderful pie up in the sky there. But again, visions are one thing, and procedural steps in order to take to be able to get in the same directions are another thing. And this is a good start. Divorcing our content from this separate platform and bringing the ownership back to us, have some redundancy in terms of owning it, and then parsing, curating, and otherwise what we need for future content for future platform from that baseline of everything that is us.
I like it. Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you look at the, I posted some of Ashley's tweets, the topic. Literally, I woke up this morning and Facebook said that one of the things that I posted 2 years ago that I reposted went against their guidelines. So I'm like, wait a minute. So something I posted 2 years ago is against the guidelines, and now you're potentially going to kick me off? I see this trajectory. And then we talk about the memory bank. I'm like, yeah, I can see that. Kronos, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak a few minutes.
Or
Just wanted to share a little quick story, and hopefully I can get some guidance from the group. Um, I recently moved from Michigan over to Florida under the understanding that my job was secure, that I was going to be able to work remotely. I mean, purchasing and in sales, I can do both. And what I'm hoping to be able to find through the network of acquaintances and friends that I've had in spaces is to see if I can get some assistance in finding a good professional recruiter in the area. I'm in Northern Florida right now. Obviously, I can work remote. I can relocate if I need to, or such. And unfortunately, I lost my job last week, so that obviously puts me the level of anxiety that I have is pretty high, as you can imagine, moving into a new state and not knowing anyone. So I'm just seeking for help out there, that anybody that might be willing to lend me a hand.
whereabouts are you in Florida, if you don't mind me asking?
No, not at all. I am just north of Jacksonville. I am in a city called Fernandina Beach. So it's about 30 minutes north of Jacksonville.
Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, what do you enjoy doing?
Well, I enjoy the network. I enjoy talking to people and negotiating on either side of the table, either on the procurement side or in the sales side. I have been in the automotive industry in the Detroit area.
Okay.
And the customers that I've had array from Tesla to Ford, Mercedes Benz, uh, and such from a purchasing perspective. From a sales perspective, I call them those same customers, but I've been with the tier ones. I've worked for companies like Visteon, which used to be part of Ford Motor Company a long time ago. Federal Mogul that provides powertrain components. So I've done electrical, I've done um, powertrain components on both the purchasing side and on the sales side. So I have a pretty wide range of experiences on both fronts.
If you could just snap your fingers and work for whatever your company you wanted on the planet, are there any companies that you've been admiring from afar that if they gave you a job offer, you'd be like, I'm down like a clown, Charlie Brown?
Yes, I have to say it will probably be somebody like Tesla would be very interesting to me because their vision is to where they're going. I would like to work for a company that has stability. And I've worked for a couple of companies in the recent past that have been smaller in scope. And these companies, when the economy catches a cold, these companies catch a flu. So
Do you think leverage has anything to do with that equation?
absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. So I'm looking for stability.
Yeah.
I,
I'm
I,
just going to let you know that my buddy, I'm in an energy company with a friend, and that friend also works at Tesla.
okay.
So my name is Michael Jagdeo. I'm a headhunter. If you connect with me, you'll see my LinkedIn in my bio, and I can just send your profile along at the very least to him and maybe some of the other automotive contacts we have.
Okay, no, and I'm willing to switch spaces if it's not automotive. I'm willing to go because the skill sets that I have, I
Okay,
think they can
so
be
that's the
transferred.
more interesting part. I always tell people that I just because you've done something in the past doesn't mean you're going to love doing it in the future.
Right.
So if you were to break away, and maybe let's say they made it illegal for you to necessarily work in the same industry or vertical or horizontal, is there anything that you think would get you up in the morning in terms of repurposing your skills towards a different domain?
I like. Always been very intrigued with two other industries, and that's been national defense and healthcare. I used to be in the military a long time ago, and I don't know if you know what a corpsman is. Is essentially a medic. And so I have basic knowledge of medicine. And I've always, my wife is in the medical field, she's a nurse. So obviously, by osmosis, I have absorbed quite a bit of knowledge on that from equipment to treatments and various cases. And also national defense, just because that's near and dear to my heart. So a company like Raytheon or what have you would be of interest as well.
What do you think, Zach?
Wow.
I think we need to get our mobile sales team up and running so that we can start doing this, because I think the writing's on the wall. We have like so many individuals that are like, "Hey, I want to do remote sales," that come in here or come to win the war, and I think that building that solution that says, "Eat what you kill," and we're gonna give you all of the different right. You could sell for 10 different companies completely remote. We just have to build it.
So I just gave you a follow, and so if you don't mind, if you can allow me to DM you, I'd be more than
Yep,
happy to
I just
send
followed you
you.
back.
Okay, great.
Because I think this works so well into the fractional workspace of the future, right? I think that we are going to like I've said before, I think that freelance work is going to turn fractional, where people are doing, maybe they do 4 or 5 hours of sales for different companies in the morning, and then they're driving for Uber for 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon, and then they're doing some other fractional job in the evening, right? Once once the right of healthcare is realized in the United States, there's no reason for people to go and get a in-person job unless it is exactly what they want to do with their life, right? Unless that is the dream job, there's no reason for them to go and sit at a desk and do something that they hate. Once healthcare becomes realized as a national right and everyone gets it, then everyone is going to work fractionally just for the money to pay the bills so that they can focus on what their passions are. And I think that we need to continue to build those fractional places where people are not being taken advantage of, and we're not racing to the bottom, right? We don't need to race to $5, a piece work. We need to race to good paying fractional work, and creating industries like that. So I think that sales is one of those places where we can start and create large fractional um, opportunity.
Well, that and when you have somebody that also has experience in the procurement area, I think that helps even more because there are certain intangibles that you learn through negotiations that when you understand the point of view of that other party, if you will, whether if you're in the sales side or the purchasing side, and you have good solid understanding of both perspectives, I think that's incredibly helpful. It's not always something that you can put in a tangible sense, but that experience is, I think, priceless in many cases.
Yeah, I've talked to Mike before about this. Is one of the jobs that I thought about, or one of the companies I thought about building was building a sales army, leveraging the spouses of military, active duty military, so that the spouses who are home can do sales for legitimate companies, not MLMs, which they usually fall into right now because of the inability to for companies to trust them because they leave their area every 2 years. So a lot of places won't hire those spouses. So if we can create a sales army out of these spouses, you can get thousands of people doing sales work. And now it's just then all you have to do is figure out how do you pay them for the fractional work, which is something you can figure out. So it's just an idea I had before, but if we have the right individuals to teach and train and manage them, right, then you not only have a giant sales force, but you have an effective one. So that's just one of those things.
Go ahead, Agatha.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
How are you guys?
You guys had a wild night last night. Should I delete that recording?
That was hilarious.
I don't care. I think some people are very uncomfortable for their sakes. I think you may want to delete it. Not for my sake. I'm very comfortable with who I am and what I do, and I can be very professional at the same time. Well, I have fun, you guys. Why Kronos is here? Because Kronos sent a message in our group chat, and he just said I lost my job and anybody know anybody? And I was like, you should come to this space. And Casey and I hanging out there. And if we're not around, please say you know us. And I just, wanted to say we know Kronos, or at least I know Kronos since a few months back. And I think what might be important to add that, not only has Kronos been really genuine and very kind and always respectful and professional, and he has a fun side, but he has always been very respectful when some people get really nasty, and he speaks up when but he has an immigrant background, which I always think is important to know, but it just tells you how much there is in people, and that they have been through stuff, and it's never easy being an immigrant and learning a new language and creating a life, and also he has a military background. So I don't know how much of that is important, but I just wanted to add to that.
Very important. What you just heard is an actual reference. Usually what people do when you do references, we stopped doing references like 20 years ago because we realized, oh, you're just paying people to talk nice about you so you get the job. So like we virtually stopped doing references. With that one reference alone, like let's see when like the top right-hand quadrant of the Gartner sales, you're right, because of all of those things, right? And that doctors know doctors, lawyers. Anyone in recruiting will tell you that doctors know doctors and lawyers know lawyers. Sure, a lot of people have knowledge, skills, and attitudes, but do we get along? This way of kind of peer-to-peer connecting with each other and understanding how people act before the fire hits, before you hire them, dude, that's like everything. So long story short, thanks, Lagatha, for introducing Kronos. Kronos, Zach has a military background. And so when you mention that you have a military background, I'm sure all of our ears perked up. So does Ron, actually. So welcome. You're among friendlies.
No,
You
thank
see,
you very
I knew
much.
it. I knew I could add some value, after yesterday was all shits and giggles, but I do add some value sometimes.
You always add value, Lagatha.
Thanks, Stack.
So to make it a little more concrete, there are a lot of startups that we have in our syndicate. There are startups that Ron knows, startups that Zach knows, startups that Casey is actually building, startups that are in revenue like Ahmed with Safe AI, and startups like the one his advisor has, which is IT Harvest. And what I found is that many people ask us to do sales. Now, the challenge with doing sales for people is oftentimes sales isn't the issue. People yell at sales, but sales isn't the issue. It's product. And Steve Blank made a joke that startups pivot by firing their VP of sales. Because instead of changing the product, they just fire the VP of sales saying, this person sucks. We need someone new to ram our product down someone's throat. They're not ramming it hard enough. So, there is one of these challenges with doing sales, which is it actually usable and useful? Does it do a job to be done? What is the perceptual quadrant? How long is the sales cycle? How long does the demo have to go to exchange value? Do we have to do this demo in person, or can we just have a GIF that shows them the value in all of 5 seconds? But if we're able to swarm a founder like Ahmed and say, all right, Ahmed, he wants to do sales for you, and then have all the salespeople like Kronos and everyone else like beat it to death with love, then whatever startups come out the end of that, we can say, all right, we really like your idea. Who put up your hand if you would like to enter into the eat what you kill or whatever you want relationship with this person. They put their hands up, you've identified your people.
I have a background in hunting.
I mean, we're going to your place during the apocalypse, clearly, right?
I thought you're all
For
coming to
sure.
New Zealand.
I
Are you
mean,
not coming all to New Zealand? I
I
heard that's
love
one of the best
Kiwis, and
places
I
to
just want
be.
to crack a beer and see the world literally burns down. Sorry for anybody with children because I don't have any. My legacy is a representative VC capital, but that's it. I will literally crack a beer, lay back, and see the world crash.
Yeah, I'll join you.
I'm on the fence. I'm still trying to figure out because my biology is saying otherwise, but I realize you also don't have that problem, Ron. So
Like I
um,
tell my mother, I keep trying, Ashley. We keep trying. The three of us have been at it for a while.
That's terrible. We keep trying. Oh, man, that hurts.
What's terrible about trying? Trying is what makes you successful.
period. That's right.
Wow, that would be transcendence.
Well, you never
I
know,
want to
you
stay in
know.
this plane.
Transcendence. Hi, Casey. How's it going? I'll introduce you on that.
Well, that's a hell of an introduction. There's one way to come into a room, so to speak.
Yes, I like it.
Yeah. So, Kronos, buddy. I'm gonna echo things I've already told you before. You're in a good position. You're in a good position. Your overall financial health and your strength of character, I see good things for you. You know, watching you, the way you guys dealt with what you dealt with spoke more volumes of character to me than almost anything else you could say. I fully and wholeheartedly endorse you.
Thank
So,
you, Casey.
Dude, if you ever want a character reference or there's anything I can ever do for you, just, it's yours.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I mean, for in the interest of full disclosure, in Spaces, I met Casey a while back, and when I was contemplating moving from Michigan to Florida, Casey works in the mortgage industry, and he helped me essentially transition from a transactional perspective from what he does professionally, and Casey was superb to work with. And it was great dealing with Casey. He made the whole process as seamless as possible. So thank you, Casey, for everything that you did. And obviously, my worst fear came to pass, unfortunately. So now I got to make the best of it and pick up and go. And being in a new state with knowing no one is it's a bit challenging, but got to make the best of it and forge ahead. Right, adapt and overcome, as people in the military typically say.
Can I, Carlos, can I add some color to the transaction? Would you mind if I shared a couple things?
No, go ahead. Be my guest.
Good. So the situation that he found himself in was that I personally blame the sales pressure in real estate. They ended up going under contract to sell their home because they were going to prep to move to Florida, and then realized after kind of a messy uh, contract negotiation, they didn't really necessarily want to sell their home in Michigan and move anymore, but they were under contract. 9.9 times out of 10, when people find themselves in that situation, they do some god awful shit to get out of those contracts, and it always fails. They end up in court, things go sideways, but they fight it like the Dickens. And Kronos stepped up to the plate like a man and said, all right, well, we gave our word on this. We signed a contract. And unless there's a viable opportunity to back out, we gave our word and this is what we're going to do. Even though they didn't want to do it. That is so rare. Like I can't applaud you hard enough. Like that speaks so many volumes to your character. I've seen so many people buckle under that weight and their quality of character totally evaporates. And you held strong, like really strong. There are opportunities there for you to be a real asshole and to be a lesser of a person. You didn't take it. So, if karma is a thing and there's a balance to the universe in any way, shape, or form, you have a wealth of benefit coming to you as far as I can see. And given your overall situation, you guys are going to be all right. You're going to be okay. Especially if you take this time and put yourself in the position you want to be in. But I see good things for you guys.
Thank you very much, Casey. Appreciate it.
I'm racking my brain, but at the very least, I can introduce you to my buddy at Tesla. I have another friend in Florida, a few friends, but at the same time, to me, I look at this whole thing very simply. You know what? Only you know what you want, and only you know what you're capable of, and only you know who you'd like to work with. So when I talk to people and they say, "Hey, I want to get a job," I'm like, "All right, well, tell me where you want to work," and I'll call them up and I'll be like, "Hi, my name is Michael. We haven't spoken before. I'm going to take some of the mystery out of my call." And that's how I start the conversation. And after 3 to 7 contacts over time, eventually you get to do your pitch and you have a probability of whatever weighted average there is per contact, but you can assure yourself of success if you make the requisite attempts over time, as long as your hypothesis is right. And so the first way I would start is let's start with a list of the places you want to work, and let's contact the people in charge of the function for which you can provide the most value. And we'll just reach out to them directly. Heck, we might even tweet at them on Twitter.
Okay.
Well, can I add to that? I
Please.
I would that's probably the first few steps, but before that, maybe that's second. Right now is crucial for you to think about how you want to work, what you want to feel, what you want to be contributing to, what you have been missing in prior experiences working for someone else or working with other people. Uh, the next phase of your life can look different by choice and by design. So I think this is when you should be digging even deeper to think, I mean, we were talking about legacy before, but how can you continue that, based on where you've been and where you want to go?
Also, keep in mind that, to your point, because every time the interest rate point rises, companies go out of business, there is zero guarantee that even if you get your dream job, then that dream company will be solvent in the next month. And because I don't necessarily trust any one company to stay solvent, I always make sure that we try to have a constant stream of leads so that if that thing happens that we know that probably does sometimes to folks, let's make sure that even if you have something, we're hedging our bets in real time. 7 years ago, I knew serverless Java software engineers working for 3 different companies at the same time, making 120 here, 150 an hour here, and $90 an hour over here. Why? Because these companies would go out of business on the drop of a hat, and they still had kids, and they still want a great, living. So they're like, all right, so I'm going to chop my day. I know I can do a full day's work in about 90 minutes or 120 minutes. So I'm going to work for 3 companies and do what usually is 1 day's work for someone in 2 hours. And that's how they've been doing it. And it's actually created a resilient income for them, because if a company blew up, great, you get paid more. Company dissolves, that's fine. We lost the second out of our first and third jobs. That's the implication of working fractionally. It's the ability to choose who you work with and how.
Real quick interjection. If the Great Resignation didn't tell us one thing loudly, is that the way we look at work is flawed. And I think anybody that had anything to do with HR, Mike, please chime in afterwards, is a failure of observation on our part and definitely an intentional oppression on the other part. Now, not with ill intent, because everybody has the intent and purpose to keep as many workers as possible for the least amount of money paid. The beautiful thing that just happened is the most innovative country on earth is so by virtue of being the most stressful one. Our hustle, porn, and burnout intensity is the ingredient for innovation, unfortunately. Also, it doesn't preclude floor from other people. So, what I'm trying to say is not social liberalism, I'm not talking politics, I'm talking about the future of work. What has happened when it comes to the gig economy is the ability to represent yourself vocationally and monetization. Your monetization can be literally any one of those can pay for you. So no matter it is what you do, you can do more of it and in separate areas. I love Mike's question when he said, what is your ideal role? And if you can fragment it to do the puzzle pieces of what that is specifically for one thing or another, or 3 or 4, you welcome to an amazing world in which you can do all of that.
I think because we have so many options, it can become very easy to get mesmerized by the infinite McDonald's menu, right? McDonald's menu is very simple. It'd be like, all right, I want a combo, or I want to unbundle the combo and have fries and a cheeseburger and nuggets. You know what I mean?
That's a good premise, yeah.
Right? So typically we've been presented with this constrained McDonald's menu. And so it's often, I think, hard for us to imagine how we would like to get compensated because it's always been spoon. The revenue model for us has always been predetermined by the other party and hasn't been co-created. You know, some of the entrepreneurs I work with now, when they hire somebody, the people will say, hey, how much does this job pay? And the entrepreneurs will say, I don't know, tell me what you want to get paid. What do you think you're worth? And people are like, what do you mean? What do you think you are worth? I will pay it. And then they're like, I don't know how to answer that. What do I say? I'm like, you just tell them. Right? But there is that discomfort because we're not used to designing our own compensation packages. That's never been asked of us. That job, that function, that thought experiment has always been spoon fed to us.
Forced spoon fed to you. Forced.
Here's the plane, piecemeal work, you know, Taylorism 4.0, you know?
Gig economy, but you're doing it to literally train our cars to replace you.
Yeah, we should get the IP for every time we train a car to, you know what I mean? Hey, I've been training you for a long time. You think this training is for free, Elon Musk? You know what I mean?
By the way, I just saw the biases in our world at least a little because I come from 20 years worth of bias in entrepreneurial landscape, specifically early stage. I don't think it was, yeah, I don't think I know a founder that will be confused by the idea of what you want to do, regardless of which KFC, Mickey D's, Popeyes you walk through or drive through. They don't care. They'll just build their own. So it's funny to hear I just heard the disparity slash distance, and I love it because you come from a world in which too many options is a problem. I come from a world that too many options need to be distilled down to that Mickey D's menu in order for them to make money. Literally, the other
Yeah,
sides, two other sides.
yeah. It's to decide means to cut off alternatives.
Actually, like execute to the point that you get one location before you expand to another location. Make money from your customer. Make sure that your margins are solid. Make sure you invest a runway as you're not in the black will get you there, and then expand. Literally, the opposite world. Same, similar, the same.
I think it's just Emerson said, "You can set your own rate, and therein lies your freedom. You can
You're
just."
talking to a person that set his rate at zero because he didn't know that paying it forward needs to have a limit by virtue of 24/7 and death.
But I think that experience has taught you that. Remember how we started this off with Ahmed, and Ahmed said, "I love what you're saying. I'd like to pay you to talk to you." So I think what's happening is you're finding people who are looking for you, by virtue of you just being yourself.
By virtue of you inviting me to meet them too.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I can never get my own advice, but damn am I good at shelling it out.
Oh, all right. If that was a tweet, I'd say that I ghost wrote it, but okay. I feel
Yeah,
like that twice, three times, four times a week. I don't know.
yeah. Casey and maybe the wifey and a few other people have affectionately puppet master. Because I'm like, hey, I know who you should meet. And it's like, all right.
And you know in HR the rule of twos, right? The moment you have two references that are organically third partied to any candidate that doesn't come from
Oh,
internally from the
on,
company. I'm
right?
sorry. I am a journalist with a lot of domain expertise on a lot of things. You know that. Sorry. Um, but you know the rule too. So once you have two references that came from a third party, that candidate is done. And the moment you're in the back of the mind of whomever needs anything, it's done. So you have two of those, and you've created that for many others. I think all of us that want a better world will selfishly empower and nudge, push, and prod those around us towards their better self by virtue of connecting them with better opportunities.
Yeah, I think the problem that I've come across, and this is a very personal thing, uh, is that coming from being an artist and the conversation around what is valuable in the art world, uh, as an entrepreneur, but also someone that's moving into a space where you're dealing with a lot more strict or, corporate entities, going between the two, I'm having trouble articulating value or finding pain points to be able to explain, like, this kindness piece, this investment in self development is going to be the thing that's going to push the needle and help solve this gap that everyone is experiencing across the board. It doesn't matter the industry. All of this ties back to something that can be a very simple fix. It's just whether or not you realize it. Yeah, I
Can
need.
you add color to that, please? I would love to hear more about that specific process because what you seem to describing is a circumstantial societal anti-value for art, which is somewhat expressed in Western society. And like all scarcity, it's more driven by very specific gatekeepers, very specific nodes, very specific networks. That's one. But two, you're also describing something personal, which is finding your own value in that vertical, which is art, and then moving to somewhat entrepreneurial, let's say, expression of said art. I want to hear the connection and then your path, if you will.
Oh, sure. Well, personally, art has been a tool that stems from my appreciation for life and existing in the world that we are in, right? I can see and recognize beauty, um, as it is. Whether that's something that other people can see or not remains to be seen, but it inspires conversation, and that conversation inspires others to create in the way that makes the most sense for them. In our world, I find that people who are suffering, or the people that we are um, employing, right? The people that are actually doing the work are oftentimes not recognized for what their particular means of creating is. And that leads to frustration, lack of communication, feeling unsupported, feeling like, they're missing the mark, and maybe that speaks to a need for, like, change in how people are recognized, how people are recruited, how people are uplifted in the jobs that they're doing, which tends to happen at a managerial level. It's not even like executives that are involved in that day-to-day process, but it should be a part of every organization's mission if it's to be sustained. So I'm calling art I'm think I'm redefining what art is, because I'm not in this moment speaking about like a product or a service or a piece that's created. I'm talking about the phrase, the art of, um, being the process itself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I want to jump real quick because you're describing something awesome. Um, Allow me a contrarian response first and foremost. If you give an extraordinary amount of work in order to be valued in a similar way to those who do not need the same work, and your work is invisible, it's not surprising that you will not be rewarded for it. Uh, I'm speaking very, 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 again, I call myself an ally. I'm a gay expat Israeli Jew throupled in the middle of the Castro San Francisco. I am oozing with privilege for where I am compared to where you are. I recognize society wise, I'm 7 steps behind, but in reality, you're about 20 to 30. So the headwind you face, pretty much, I would assume a lot here, but your hustle and grit will outshine pretty much any peer next to you by a magnitude, if not two at least. Also, your ability to express, present, or be visible in that is therefore either hampered, suppressed, or worse. So there was never an avenue prior to now for you to even have that conversation. Again, I'll kind of dive into behavioral psychology because it's easy. And by the way, I have an 8:30 call, but I'll come back later. But back to that, behavioral psychology kind of plays the idea of if you want to have the most productive team, to your point, if you want to have a sustainable company, you need to have a long-term view. That's really hard with a 3 month stock cycle. I will not get into that tangent now. I'll stick to what you said. You are not in a position to be your full self or acknowledged, recognized, or rewarded for it because you are not showing and are literally dissuaded, if not worse, from ever showing that you're working harder, achieving more. Because the hustle and grit that requires to take those 30 steps ahead into where society is baseline now are not for them to see. Can you really blame people that get free work for free to not charge for it? Period. So we would do the same. If somebody came to our world and just like showered us with rewards and manna from heaven, as agnostic as I am, it's a fun little tangent, but I will be grateful. If I can do more, achieve more, reach more, apply more, deploy more, create more, and have less resources drained from me, that will be what I optimize for. I can't blame anybody else for doing exactly the same. All system people and organizations do the same. All of them. Now, to you specifically, and now expressing that specific dissent, company dissent, behavioral psychology, expressing that code switch that happened between hustle and grit, burnout that needs to literally daily maintained by you, to the expense of your mental health, to the expense of your well-being, to the expense of your expression, to the expense of your capabilities of doing more with less in order to achieve more and grow in those organizations needs to put into question, A, is the organization be willing to listen to me as I am and see me for as I am without me feeling I need to be a different person? One, am I safe in doing so? And then can I be dissentful of the process that got me here? If the organization can do those three things, I will humbly ask you, as a cautionary, illusionary friend from nowhere right now, hopefully more later, but it doesn't matter for the what I'm about to say. Walk the fuck away.
Yeah, Ron and I had this conversation a few times over the past little while, and it reminded me. I remember I was talking to a friend, and I was telling him, "Hey, man, I'm really disappointed because a friend of mine didn't get nominated for this award or whatever." And I was talking to him, telling him this, that, and the other, and he goes, "Hey, just a question. So, if you don't like them so much, why the fuck would you want an award from them?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right." And it was so freeing to realize, like, I don't want that. And any of those holes that I don't think I have, I can figure it out. But if the head is sick, if uh, if the queen bee is sick, the hive won't work. You know, and so you're not going to get any honey from that. And I think we've all had that experience where we see the possibility, but we don't realize that there is an ethos misalignment. And we fight against the ethos and we fight against the ethos. But I think after, coming across this over and over and over again, I've come to the solution that if I want to see something happen, probably going to have to build it myself because I don't have the right to change how another company works. I only have the right to change how mine works.
Enter the kindness community, right?
Or the selfish community towards kindness, because this is the most long-tailed version of kindness. Be the most selfish self. Empower yourself to be the most of you can be, and you literally elevate your community by virtue of being unedited, and everybody around you are happier for it. Um, quickly, I need to go, guys. I'll come back soon. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, but I'll come back later.
Yes, I appreciate you. I totally hear you on that selfishness. And we always come back to that when we have our conversations on Mondays. It's just like very cyclical and some part of me says people get tired of hearing it, but it's the answer. So I don't we're going to have to keep talking about it, but people feel more comfortable talking about others first, right? Like the
Well,
greater good. And
that
then we bring it
that
back around to self.
that's the beauty of like me being a headhunter, because like I can talk to folks and really believe in them, and then I can go to the employer or whoever it is and be like, this person's great, and then they'll say, how much should you get paid? I'm like, I don't know. Let's go for as much money as humanly possible. And if there's a lot of value, people will actually, oh, man, people don't realize when people see value, they'll overpay for it if they failed before trying to solve for that function. They will really overpay for it just to make sure. Do you know how many dead ideas are in the heads of subject matter experts that have tried once, tried twice, tried a third time?
Unleash me on them. On that note, see you guys soon. Unleash me on them.
He's like, wait, I want to talk about this too. Wait.
Yeah, we all have 11:30s. Ash, what's going on? It's good to see you.
You mean me?
Yeah.
Well, what's going on? I just talked about something that's been in my head and on my heart for a while, so feeling good, you know. Um, Everybody asks me what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, and I really feel that, you know, what we're talking about right now is my thing, right?
Yeah.
Like my if I had a life's work, it would be this. So, you know, when you said the problem, when you mentioned the problem that they're solving for, you know, it just brought up in me like what problem am I helping people to solve? And how can I simplify that, distill that, and market as that solely? And rest is the thing that comes to mind, especially with what um Ron was just talking about, the grind and hustle culture, and you know, really unpacking that. But you're right, there are people that I just don't want to work for or work with, that I'm exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am exhausted,
Yeah.
and
It's
I
real,
know
it's a
other
real
people.
vampire. You know what I mean? Those interactions.
Yeah, yeah, but I don't know where to find people to connect with that understand the value. It is typically not um in the spaces that I think I've been conditioned to
Right.
want to be in, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right? That's not where I'm finding the solutions. It's with other people that are doing the hard work, or, you know, facing the rejection, and workshopping ways to be more resilient and get around what should, quote unquote, be done. Um
Well, I mean, Zach is someone who is solving for this, so this might help. So, Zach has a background in the military, and they have something called the military decision making process. And what he does is he helps startup founders, because startup founders are very alone, right? Because who do they talk to, right? And so, what he does is helps founders really stay focused and execute on their missions. And recently, some of the folks he's been helping have started raising, up to seven figures for their startups. And so now a number of people through word of mouth are all coming in because they recognize that by working with Zach, someone they know was able to achieve something significant in their life. Now, I'm sure none of them ever thought of interacting with someone in the military in that way. But Zach's not your regular kind of person, right? And so my question would be like, what value do you see yourself creating, not necessarily capturing, but like what have you seen happen with the kindness community that needs to keep happening, but is maybe a little ethereal right now?
that's a great question. I see and I hear the things that we talk about being implemented consistently, whether people show up or not on a regular basis. Uh, the words that are shared in the space by the people who choose to take the mic are taken and turned into
Action.
I was gonna say like true kind acts for themselves and
Hmm.
other people. So they become models and ambassadors for this movement, right? It's more than just action steps. It is a way of thinking and a way of life that, you know, we constantly talk about ripple effects in the space. Whether you're listening to it live or you're listening to the recording, something that someone said 6 months ago that you happened to hear when you were in the space for 5 minutes, you know, uh, can change the trajectory of your life. That happens, and I hear that over and
Okay.
over and over again.
So trajectory changing. That's powerful, right? If you're able to kind of articulate the ability to help someone change the trajectory that they're on, whether it's through building self-confidence, you know what I mean, having a shoulder to cry on, helping with the next step in whatever they need to do. A lot of people, I think, are coming into this space that have been on a trajectory for 5 to 30 years of their life. And there's something that's telling them that before they depart this earth, that they want to explore that trajectory.
Yes, that resonates. Um, I think there's also a variety of perspectives that are present. So it's intergenerational. There's a global element as well. And right, so like there's cross-cultural conversations and um I mean I guess what I said before was that it also crosses industries. People are representing different types of work and experiences, so they're bringing their lives and their their full selves into the conversation. It's kind of like they're shedding armor to be able to get to the root of what it is that they really want for themselves and others.
So you see value occurring, but now you're at the point is a business creates X value and captures Y% of X. Sounds like you know that you're creating X value, right? But the question is, how might you capture this value in a way that has a multiplicative effect on the impact, not a diminishing effect? Not a trivial question to answer. That's why I talk to people like Ron. Because Ron was talking to KC, right? And KC has a financial literacy app. But he's like, you know what? I'm such a bleeding heart that I want to give it away because I want to see people get out of debt, avoid bankruptcy, and buy a home. Get out of debt, avoid bankruptcy, buy a home. And how could I possibly charge someone for saving their financial life? And Ron was like, oh, that's easy. Just in the bottom right-hand corner, just put like a little donation thing. Hey, you want to donate to the cause and keep this for free? Then donate 10, 50, 100, or pick what you want. And so in a moment, Casey was like, oh, so I can do this. Capture value in a way that aligns and is congruent with my heart. There are revenue models out there. There is a way to capture Y% of X that doesn't first make me seem sleazy, and two, doesn't have a diminishing, but instead a multiplicative effect on the impact that I'm having. So I met Ron through Zach this week, and we've just been having one conversation after another because I want to introduce him to all of the startup founders that I believe have something. Because I believe in talking to him, the founder subject matter expert can go from working in the business to working on the business and go from managing things to be a leader of managers who manage things. And that's what I learned from Zach, and I'm seeing it with Ron. So I too am in this inflection point where I'm like, okay, I see value happening. I see people getting coaching, getting software done, getting UX, the whole thing, right? But the question is, just because this value is happening doesn't mean I should capture it in a very, you know what I mean? There's a prematureness to this. And so that's why I'm talking to Ron to talk about, okay, so what are those revenue models? What metaphor frameworks already exist? Okay, are you a startup scout? You know, are you an agent? Or is this a podcast that you sell to SiriusXM? Could be some of those things, all of those things in a certain phase sequence. But that's the same thing that you're thinking about, we're thinking about as well. It's a good thing to think about. It's a blessing that you're thinking about it because you've already created value. Most people are trying to do all the digital stuff without offering anything first.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of money to get here. This is a labor of love for myself, right? Like we were talking about legacy, um, and I think creating from the heart and creating for the betterment of all is definitely what's been on my mind. Monetizing has been lower on my priority list. So being in community with people that do it regularly and with much more ease and less sleaze is the desire.
Mhm.
So you met that for me, as well as introduced me to people that are of like mind and impact creators. So
Even, you know, I transitioned in a way yesterday. So yesterday I introduced a bunch of folks in the syndicate to Christian Potenza for the voice acting, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, whenever you start introducing things for which people are exchanging money, there's, at least for me, that where you're checking yourself. You know what I mean? To make sure, like, am I really doing something? Is this really useful? Is it worth every penny? All that kind of stuff. And I had to come to terms with that well before I started presenting it to folks. You know what I mean? And I thought about all of the disaster scenarios before I did. But then, and at the end, we just had a call, introduce some folks. They got along. God knows what's going to happen next. To take the next step, there has to be value that's exchanged for them to work with Christian for the 4 weeks. And we're still really, to be honest with you, working out that price point that's going to be good for everyone because I don't want to price anyone out at the same time. But now that people have signaled that they do believe there's an immense amount of value, I'm sure we can agree on the figure. I think we are all reasonable people.
that's awesome. And I love there's openness in it. Um, I'm gonna mute. Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely some value in there. I would have chimed in, but it's French toast and Gracie's corner right now. So
We,
definitely with that.
we go up for Gracie's corner.
What's that?
I said we go up for Gracie's corner.
Oh, one thou wow. We ain't playing. What? Getting down. I love my hair. You know, it's all there. Um, but yeah, this once again syndicated, man. I love to listen to you and Ron talk. I love to listen to everybody talk again. But yeah, you were right with adding the value and coming together with the groups. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Go ahead, me.
Yeah, hey, so yo, I'm a little late to the space. Sorry about that, but
Oh, good.
I was Ashley, if you haven't unpacked the tweet you have in the nest about designing a beautiful life, that's a cool narrative I'd love to get into. Have you guys already talked about that?
Hold on. First off, you got Lionel Richie in waves, bro. I'm looking at your stuff. That is gangster right now. Now we can
That
continue.
that's Lionel Rich ETH.
I'm with it. I'm with it. I'm with it.
Very funny. No, we haven't unpacked it. I wasn't even supposed to take the mic, to be honest. And I say that because the conversation that I had that you're referencing was a two-part podcast interview, and then a space for an hour and a half last night talking about grief, which really draws on the energy, right? But it's an extremely important conversation to have and lesson to learn that you can have a beautiful life, knowing that, grief is present, how to deal with it, how to recognize it, and how to grow from, the traumatic experiences that are going
That
to.
is only going to increase because we're getting older. And we forget that as we get older, our parents and our grandparents get older too. And I can tell you, as someone who's lost a parent, that it is something that is impossible to prepare for. Go ahead, Zach.
I think that there's also an issue that we don't talk about much with grieving in the social media age, because so much of grieving for loss has to involve the physical the physical element of like being there for each other, right? And so I think it's really hard when a lot of people feel like they're getting more support from individuals through social media, because you're missing so much of the correct physical touch chemical cascades that come through grieving, right? One of the parts of grieving, and the reason why we as human beings have created rituals around losing loved ones and the grief process, is because it brings you closer to those who are your support network. It bonds the tribe together. It makes everyone feel like you're protected. But we have lost some of that when you go to a funeral and then you have this outlet to project your grief online, and you can't really show that. So that's something that I've always been interested in, is the social aspect of how social media is replacing it. And I don't think that we understand the full effects of that. And I don't think we will learn it or figure out exactly how that's affecting us as humans for a little while. Same way we don't understand how remote work is going to affect business, because it's just accelerated so quickly, and we've adopted and adapted so quickly. So just something I think that grieving is one of those processes, and that we really don't understand in a social media age as much as we should. And then the resources haven't been put into what are the effects of grieving in social media. So
Yeah, the we did talk about how um, grief is not solely tied to losing a loved one. That's the one that we're probably most commonly confronted with. But the concept of grief is so much bigger than that. You know, you're losing dreams, you're losing access to experiences. It's, friendships or relationships, jobs, um, uh, ideas that lie dormant, it takes away from your self-esteem and your experience. So you can be grieving constantly and then seek treatment for other health concerns that happen because you're not grieving in a way that makes sense for you. It's no, because of the population that you work with, Zach, you understand people that are constantly grieving and have to move through and work despite it. But I think as a people, we don't give enough credit to what grief is, how it shows up, and what we really need to do to feel supported as we move through it.
I think Brittany, just wanted to jump in, and then I'll go right to you. But being military, I see it from that side, but also because I work with founders, I think one of the things that's amazing is we don't understand when we put things on the back burner, we are creating a grief cycle that we don't get into, right? I had a founder who wanted to start a second business and he was hesitating, and I was like, what's going on? And we got to it, and he had been wanting to start his own YouTube channel for 4 years and didn't. And I was like, well, you literally had this dream that you let just continuously die little by little by pushing it off for 4 years. And you're not understanding that it's literally keeping you from feeling like you are enough and to do this second business. Like understanding that when we do those things, like you can do one of two things: is you can give up on that and go through grief for giving up on that, or letting that idea die, or you can go after it. And I think that grief projects itself in unique ways, and everyone's different. So having someone that you can talk to and get through that and get to the bottom of it's important. That's why I think mental health and therapy is so very vital, especially now. And I think it's going to change because of social media. Not only just access to it, but I think that the way we have to engage in it is going to be very different, because a lot of people are going to find their support network here, right, on Twitter Spaces, on Instagram. And what does that mean, and how does that create that chemical cascade, and what does that do to the bonding, right? So, Brittany.
Hi everyone. I was gonna talk about just kind of like what you were talking about, the social media connection to grieving and community. I know for myself and a lot of people that live in rural areas, online is a big part of our community. It is a big part of how we find out about information such as therapy, everything from therapy to food. We find out about it through social media, and without that, we wouldn't know about certain things. So I think it will open up a lot of doors for more people to go to therapy, more people to understand what grief is, and where to seek resources for that, such as the grief day that's next week. I would have never known about that without Twitter Spaces. So now I have something else, to attend, to be able to connect with people that are grieving several kind of things as I have myself. So I definitely look forward to seeing how that's going to expand community in a positive way.
Absolutely. I didn't know about it either. And I think what we learned from the conversation was that people are looking for a place to feel supported. And while they do have connections in their personal life, the the door isn't always open, or they don't feel that they can be upfront or they can be themselves fully as they're experiencing grief. There's a lot of shame there. There's a lot of frustration. The trauma is oftentimes not even fully processed, especially if you're told to suck it up or push it down or push it aside. And that is detrimental in so many ways that, ooh, um, the kindness community exists in part because people who come to Twitter spend a lot of time like venting and complaining and pointing out all the things that are wrong in this world, and you know having somewhere else to go to talk about the other side of that, or how to build on positivity and create a loop of kindness for self and the communities we're involved in. um, was my initial contribution. But I'm thinking, well, what is next? Grief is definitely a part of the conversation.
I talk with founders. Sometimes they'll have something happen in their business or in their personal lives, and then they're just like, I just have to throw myself into my work. And I say to them a lot is, that's okay. We can get through this firefight right? But once you get to the other side of the firefight, you have to have and schedule in the right amount of time to go through a process. Because you will find that you can get through a firefight and you will find reasons to go into another firefight. One of the things when we're in the military is like, when you see, that person to your left or to your right, take one, and you go, okay, you go into action mode, you get them to someplace safe, right? But you have to remember that once you drag them to someplace safe, the best thing that you can do while the medics get there is to return fire and keep moving forward to secure the objective. Then come back, then go through that process of what happened, right? How can we improve so it doesn't happen again, right? If you dwell on what happened to your friend in that moment, right then and there, you're increasing the chance that you're the next one who takes a bullet. So what do? You stay focused, you get to the other side. But once you get back, the whole platoon rallies around each other to go through that process of like, hey, he's going to be all right, and like going through grief and trying to articulate what and codify how we feel, and talk to the chaplain or talk to each other or talk to family back home, right? We're given that time to kind of go through that because we have to. Now we do it accelerated because we might have to go out, tomorrow. But we have to be able to go through that. We have to, and founders have to do it too, right? When you have to pivot and you were so sure that idea you had was going to work out and it was going to be perfect and it was what you wanted to spend the rest of your life solving, but now you're faced with the idea that you have to pivot, right? You have to be willing to go through a little bit of the grief process, to say and let go and understand that you have to move on. And I think setting up an outlet for that is really important and beautiful too. I don't think people realize that. So also talking about being nice and being kind, culture. I think that understanding everyone's baseline isn't the same is super important too. Um, I get a lot of grief because I sleep for like 3.5, 4 hours a night, and I, you know, wake up at 4 in the morning to do my first. Like I do all this stuff, and it's not because hustle culture tells me I have to. It's because that is my baseline where I feel good. That's my baseline where I feel comfortable, right? There's, but I don't ever tell anyone else that's what they need to do. When founders come and they're like, "Oh, I want to start waking up at 4," I was like, "Why?" Right? If your baseline is 9 and you can wake up at 9 and you crush just as much work, right, between 9 and 10 o'clock at night and go to bed and get 8 hours of sleep, good on you, right? You Everyone needs to understand that they have their own baseline, and that's okay, right? If you want to hustle and you want to grind and that's your baseline, cool. Just don't put it on other people. Don't don't make other people feel like that's the standard. And especially when you're a leader in any kind of community, it's on you to understand that you need to articulate that this is my baseline. I'm not projecting it that you have to have that baseline. Because what will happen is everyone in your group, everyone in your organization is going to see it and think that that's the standard if you don't articulate that it's not, right? So that's just me as a, leadership consulting and coach and all of that. I think it's important that we understand those things because I think we're all being influenced by the algorithm right now, especially. You know, I see a lot of underrepresented, under-networked founders, from communities that feel like they're not getting funded yet. All of Twitter's talking about funding these underrepresented founders, right? And so they see it all the time in their feed. Oh yeah, we just got funded. We got funded. We got funded, and they feel like it should be easy because everyone's talking about funding underrepresented, under network founders. But the truth of it is it's still under 2%, right? The algorithm is showing you all the people who are finding success because everyone's going to project that on these social media platforms, and the algorithm's going to elevate that, and you're going to see it. And now you think that just because they did, it should be easy for you, and it's not. And now you feel like you are less of a person, and that's not true. You have to look at the numbers. You got to look at it objectively, pull yourself out, and just say it's still less than 2%, and that's horrific, right? So I think that the algorithm does a lot to make people feel like baselines aren't baselines for everyone, and they have to work harder, and they have to do this, and they can't grieve, right? To bring it full circle, they can't grieve. They can't put out there that they're hurting, because no one else is. Well, that's not true. So that's just me. I rant. Sorry.
That's not true. I'm over here yelling. 100%. 100%. We talk about the difference between being nice and being kind and intent and impact a lot. Like,
Oh, this is my favorite distinction ever. All right, I want to hear yours, and then I'll tell mine.
well, what a lot of what you say tends to resonate with me, especially, how you work and the changes that you're helping to facilitate, you know, really align with how I tend to see and try to interact with people. So in the kindness community conversations, we empower people to bring their perspective of it, share, what's going on with them, and draw from their experience their own conclusion. So I'm not telling anybody the difference between being nice and being kind. I'm asking, what has your experience been with this concept? Can you point to something in your own life? And once you point to that thing, what can we all learn from your experience, right? And that happens time after time after time. um, we don't make anybody wrong. We agree to disagree, should we? Even though a lot of us are of like mind, uh, when things aren't on, when we aren't on the same page or there's more to learn, that's what we say. We don't have to come to a conclusion. We just want to recognize and leave room for growth. Um, and I guess to Mike's point, there's value in that as well, right? Like I'm developing a process for changing the the standard as it is. Um, at least that's what I'm hoping to do. That's what I want to make room for. So I'm creating space to create space in my life and other people's lives.
I had a client who said it. He said, "I don't I don't like having nice people in my circle. I like having kind people, because kind people will tell you their opinions. They can be critical. They can help you learn without being a jerk. Nice people will never tell you when you're wrong. They'll never tell you when it's a bad idea. They'll never tell you to keep pushing because you need a little push. They'll tell you to slow down, take a day. They want you to always be smiling and always be happy. They don't understand that sometimes the best thing for you is to frown and cry and go through grief. And so that's what I think is like, hate's a strong word, but for lack of a better word, right? I hate nice people. I love kind people because they're going to, like, Dan is, I think, is a kind person because he presents it in a funny way when someone says something and he's like, no, it's going to get leapfrogged, right? That idea is people are already working on ways to pass over your startup idea, but here's how we could change it, and here's how we could, right? He can give you that in a very nice way. Whereas a kind person would be like, or sorry, he does it in a very kind way, whereas a nice person will be like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great business. You should put all your time and effort into it, and I think you're going to be really successful. When he already knows it's not true. Um, Nice people will tell white lies to make you feel good and make themselves feel good. That's just the way I look at it. Since I had the client phrase it
You
that way.
fucking racist with these white lies.
Hey,
Jeez,
only I
cut it
can say
out.
that.
Cut it out.
Dan, is your mic working? You might have to leave and come back. Yes, I feel like we get a lot of pushback about whether or not kindness is inherent in every person. um, I think we've deduced that it is, but for people who love to argue, we're open to that. I think there are just so many guarded folks that we end up kind of going around in circles at times to give people permission to actually be themselves and to take away the sting of the experiences that they've had that have made it seem like, they aren't kind, when really, they've been wanting to show that and live that life out loud, whereas kindness tends to be quiet or subdued, or something that you do offhandedly or without even thinking, right? Like it's just a part of who you are. um, More often than not, you have to go out of your way to be nice to somebody, right? Like it's more forced, and um, there is intention, whether you realize it or not, when you go to do something because it's quote unquote nice. Um, Kindness is definitely more inherent.
I think it's unquestionable that kindness is inherent, because we legitimately have chemical pathways biologically made for kindness, to bond the social group together because of the social nature of human beings. Um, I think the difference is that what one perceives as kindness, is not the same as what others perceive as kindness, or how it should be displayed. Right. I think that there are a lot of people on the far right and far left who think they're being kind, by showing people what they believe is right or wrong, right? And it's unfortunate. Um, but I think that that's their way of being kind. And I think that's how people kind of gravitate towards certain voices. Um, and whereas most of the people in between, that pendulum that doesn't swing too far either side, um, show kindness in a more generic way of, yeah, I think that this is an interesting idea, but I think you're not considering XYZ thing, right? Or I think that what you're doing is beautiful, and I think that you should really pursue it, right? I think that there's a generic way of kindness, but it's those extremes where I think even the most extreme, uh, inappropriate voices from organizations that I would call awful organizations, believe that they're being kind, um, because of that's their belief. It's unfortunate, but it is. And I think that that's the thing, is like, we have a chemical pathway that makes us kind. It's just, how do we show it, and how do people perceive it,
right? We perceive it as wrong. They obviously perceive it as right and kind. So I think that's the
I think it's
unfortunate
like
part.
balancing the KC vibe, because KC's like, "Hey everyone, how's it going?" And he's like, he starts talking to people like they're his little kids. And there's that level of like just, pure heart, openness, love, blah blah blah. I find that in the end of the day, I go from maybe nice to kind or kind to nice, depending on which side, how you define those words. Which is like, I try to be overly nice in the beginning, like, "Hey, what's going on, Ann? How are things? You good? You feeling good? You feeling nice?" You know what I mean? Like, I'll talk like that in the beginning. But then if the person is expressing to me that they want to get something done, then I will turn off that just bubbly, happy because you're here and be like, "Hey, you really trying to solve this? All right. Mind if my boss used to call it an eyeball poke. Hey, Mike, I just have a little eyeball poke for you here." And just by him saying that, I'd be like, "Oh, okay." He's kind of shitting on me, but he prefaced it nicely.
Yeah, the performative nature of niceness grinds
Yes.
gears, right? Like I feel a lot of that friction, especially um heading into 1 year of having this conversation on Spaces, right? Like I can see the difference in how this information is being shared with people and, you know, the it can feel icky at times.
Yeah, yes, because it's just disingenuous. I made a video about this with KC, so I've been playing around with Snapchat filters. So KC can be like the super duper niceliest person in the universe, and so funny. I asked him, who do you think is more sensitive, singers or founders? And he couldn't decide. So what I did in the top is, how's it going? Is me just pretending to be KC, being like super duper nice, like the nicest he's ever been. I had so much fun doing it.
That's really funny.
If you
Yeah,
want to
that's
know if you really
funny.
feel about something, put on a Snapchat filter and talk to yourself. When you're talking to a different face in the mirror, it's weird how it influences your ability to go places you might not normally go. It's fascinating to me.
You know what? I just listened to a recording that I did at probably one of the toughest times in my life. Um, and I say this because my life was quite literally in danger. My health was at risk. I wrote this as a tweet and didn't post it, which means it was too real for me. Um, I was talking to myself about the problem. I did the self-coaching, like asking myself questions and answering myself like my grandmom told me not to because I sound like a crazy, right? Like that whole concept is one that keeps us from really digging into and valuing what our own voice has to say. Oftentimes, we already know the answers. We're just influenced by other people's perceptions of us and are concerned about judgment and things like that. So, even the stigma of mental health is in that, like saying don't you don't really hear voices. And I have been doing a lot of work on self and being involved in neurodivergent like conversations with people who are neurodivergent and recognizing where these stigmas are harmful to us, talking about ADA compliance, all this stuff, right? um, but I'm like, if I'm going to affect any kind of change and create trainings or engage people on a real level, I got to be able to walk the walk, right? I can't just talk the talk or tell people what to do. It's got to be ingrained in my human experience. So I've done it. I didn't use a filter, but I did use audio recording, and it sounds really funny. It sounds funny. But, it was healthy, it was good. So, yeah, I'll try that.
Talking about talking to yourself and how that has been people have been told like, oh yeah, you seem crazy when you talk to yourself. I've noticed a trend, and I don't know
if this is good or bad. It was just a trend. I don't ever remember seeing commercials for schizophrenia therapies for the last 30 years of my life. And yet now I see it almost daily on TV and online. Oh, did we lose a connection?
No.
Oh, sorry. I think that it's interesting. I don't know if it's just because it's now something that they're looking to monetize because everything else uh, is already out there, and they're just moving on to the next thing. But it's interesting to note that more people are having those self-talk things, and now there's a lot of like, hey, if you feel like you're dealing with schizophrenia, you can get evaluated, and here's a drug to help you have less episodes and things online. It's just interesting that you said that. Don't talk to yourself because you look like a crazy. That's what people used to say, and now I'm seeing this all the time.
Oh, along with the increase, like the steady growth of like the conversations around what it looks like to join the military, I think that stood out to me, especially the gaming aspect of it. Like when I first saw that, I freaked out because I'm like, this is not a game.